Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast, is brought to you by you. If you want to learn how to support our podcast network, head to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Constellation, Last Stand Media's conversational podcast. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm feeling a little weird because we just recorded one of these in real time yesterday. So I'm like, why am I already doing this again? Yeah. We have to load up because the holiday season is coming. I already said my name is Colin Moriarty. Dagan Moriarty, my brother. This is why I shouldn't snap out of my whole thing. People are like, how do you do that every week? And it's because I'm like, I just kind of black out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You put the blinders on.
So we used to say at IGN when they would make us do multiple takes, I'm like, it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. And inevitably, it's like the best take you're going to get is the first one. How are you today, my friend? Welcome to the show.
We're like a racehorse. I'm good, man. It's nice to see you guys. We have a new face here, which is exciting. You know what I just saw? I was driving. The reason I have to go early, Helene's doing one of her art craftery market things. And it's in like the sticks. It's not local this time. It's like 40 minutes away. And so I was driving in like really rural Eastern Pennsylvania, and I saw the coolest thing. It's like an old single room schoolhouse. I don't want to say like Little House on the Prairie, but kind of like Little House on the Prairie. And it was converted into an ice cream parlor called Sunday School. And I was like, you know what? That's the fucking coolest thing I've ever seen.
Definitely.
How did I not know about this place? Those are the type of things. It doesn't take much to tickle my funny bone.
And it's like Sunday AE?
AE.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was just like, what?
Nice.
That is genius. I hope that place lasts forever.
This reminds me of when I went to Kentucky and I was newer to like the world of, that's when I was newer friends with Eric Castro and guys like that. And I was learning about what angel share, if people out there know that term, the angel share, which is like the evaporation of bourbon in a barrel as it gets older.
Right.
The angel share, like they take it and it gets more and more condensed down.
So cool.
And I was devil's cut, right?
That's like
what's in the barrel.
Right. Exactly. And I was like, there's a devil's cut bourbon that I think Jim Beam does or whatever. But I went to Eric, who's a James Beard nominated bartender and bar owner or whatever. And I'm like, we should open a bar and name it Angel Share. And he looked at me and he said, like dead ass, he was like, there are 5,000 bars named Angel Share.
Like you thought you had the best. Because for you, that was a great idea.
Right, I was like, it was like franchise. I was like, oh my God. He's like, no one's come up with that idea before. Dude, the coolest thing going through, we actually went to Wild Turkey and the guy literally was just going through with a screw gun and just screwing open like barrels of bourbon and just letting it pour out. And then they like basically seal it up with this weird stuff and you could just drink it right out of the barrel and
That's
stuff.
Incredible.
And they were saying that the founder of Wild Turkey's son, who's like very old now, like you can just find him in the rick houses and you just hear the little like and then like he's just like getting drunk in like the various parts of like whatever million of rick houses they have, and you can just know where he is by the sound of the screw gun as he goes around and just drinks the bourbon.
You know what's incredible about that? They still like it. It would be like the founder of Baskin Robbins still loving ice cream. It's like they still want to get drunk on it.
Yeah, hell yeah.
That's their entire life.
It's dope, dude. I love it. But you said new face, so let's get to the new face first and we'll leave.
Let's do it.
Some might say the best for last, but I don't know about that.
Oh, hey.
Jimmy Champane, good to see you, horror YouTuber. I wanted to introduce you as James Champane.
That's classic.
Yeah, which is a little more classy.
Brings me back.
Yeah. Yeah, welcome to the show, my friend. Good to see you.
Yeah, good. Glad to be here. I was just telling Dustin yesterday, I'm like actually excited to be on a podcast, which I don't think has happened to me in a like really long time. So I'm really happy to be here.
Interesting. What are people putting guns to your head when you do the podcast typically or something?
No, it's just like, since my channel's mainly focused around the Halloween movie franchise, every podcast I go on is like, what's your favorite Halloween movie? Tell us why. And I'm like, I can only, so then I started flipping them around. I'm like, well, today I like Halloween 4, so I'll defend that one. And then I started defending the bad ones, which became fun, but I'm like, I'm tapped. It's like what you're just talking about with like, oh, if you sell this bourbon or whatever, you're making it all the time. Do you get sick of it? I don't get sick of the Halloween franchise. I do get sick about like talking about like my favorite movies in the franchise after a while, because I've been doing it for like 6 years.
I get
that. Yeah, totally understand. And yeah, the beauty of our show, as you know, this show anyway, is to just bring whatever you want to the table. I would love to talk horror with you one day on this show, but but it doesn't even have to be Halloween. It'll be interesting to know because you have such a deep. I remember talking to you, I think at Dustin's a little bit about a couple of years ago, but just your deep well of knowledge. And Dustin has talked about that in the past. Like it would be very interesting to talk more about that, but another time, another place. You're welcome on the show, though. I appreciate you taking the time to be here with us today. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure.
Dustin Furman, executive producer. I said best for last, and that's up to interpretation, I guess. I'm not going to say it is true. I'm not going to say it isn't true. It's good to see you. What I'm curious about with these episodes is, are we going to publish them in order? Or are you like now, do you have like these slots where you're like, now this goes here in a month from now? That's what I'm wondering as I record this. It doesn't really matter, but.
Right. I honestly don't know. We could just start like, you recorded yesterday. That'll come out Monday. Then we could do this the following Monday, right? So we could do something like that where and then we'll have the last 3 banked by the end.
Yeah. I think I like the other way personally.
Yeah, have them slotted.
I guess maybe we're talking about the same thing sequentially, like publishing them sequentially would make more sense to me. Because I can understand the satisfaction as a producer, right? Like it's two things. Either you're getting something done earlier than it should be, which is its own satisfaction, or you're pre-publishing further out, which is like a different kind of comfort, a longer lasting, a more distant comfort.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you got to just get them out in succession, in my opinion.
Yeah, you don't want to, not that these shows are pretty evergreen for the most part, but we also don't want anything could happen between now and December when this releases. We might not even be alive when it releases. So,
oh my Jesus,
something to think about. But Jimmy,
I wanted to ask you, them? Oh, sorry. I had a question first. Do you pre-schedule? Like, do you load them all into YouTube or your podcast posting app and then just let it go? Or do you have fear like I do? Like when I go on break for Christmas or Thanksgiving, I have to, put them on one at a time. For peace of mind. I can't just let it go and schedule it.
So in past years, I have went and scheduled everything on Patreon, which is it's not really difficult, but it's a lot of data and different things to organize. And because you got to set when it comes out on Patreon, you got to set when it comes out publicly. You have 2 posts for each show for audio and video. So you end up having, if we take 2.5 weeks off or whatever, that's, almost a little over 20 days ish. So you have 40 posts to organize. But then that's on top of that, we can't, because our videos are unlisted on YouTube, you can't schedule those. So during Christmas break, I will be low level working to some degree and publishing stuff and stuff like that. But it's way, way low levels. It's not recording and everything else should be done. So
we should get Lockmore to do that over the holidays. So he strikes me as a pagan. So I don't think he's celebrating anything. What is he wearing? A fucking deer horns and waiting for the winter solstice?
Right.
Some weird shit like that.
Probably Lockmore some kind of ritual.
Sent me a package for my wedding, which was in October 13th. And he sent it early. He sent it around my bachelor party, which was in September. And it has been a nightmare for him to get it here. And eventually he was just like, I'm going to tell you what it is. It's a bunch of Belgian beer, which got me more excited for it. And it's still not here. So he sends me no way. An updated picture of the tracking once a week. And he's like, it's in America. It will eventually end up at your house. I'm like, great. I appreciate the thought.
What is up with
the
that?
most.
That is insane.
I don't know why it's hard because I sent my wedding invitation and everything to him in Belgium and it got there within days. So I don't know why in the reverse,
very strange.
It's so difficult.
I just try to think about why packages get so, maybe it's the writer in me, but why they get lost and then try to figure out a real reason. So you imagine, okay, it was loaded onto a truck, the dude quit. And the driver quit and they parked his truck in the garage somewhere and literally haven't unloaded the packages out of it or something like that. It's how do things just disappear like this other than getting stolen, of course, but I just don't feel like that's very common. In fact, they tell you if you're sending illegal things like weed or anything like that, they tell you to use the USPS and not FedEx or UPS because they can go through anything they want and shit gets stolen out of there all the time.
Yep.
Illicit things, and then you can't really report it or anything like that, which I think is so funny. So I always just wonder, here's an example. I ordered something from Mack Weldon, who's a sponsor. I really like them. And then it just never got processed. It just never got processed. And then I emailed them 2 weeks later. I'm I literally was are you ever going to send the things I bought. It's not like a free thing. I bought these. And they're like, oh yeah, sorry. And then they just sent it along. I'm like, what happened here?
Slid by their computer system?
Yeah, I guess so. Like it just
so
someone
automated.
Like in the warehouse hit the wrong button and it just was like checked me off and it was like, oh, okay. I don't know why I'm so fascinated by just how it happens because it's so mechanized. It's so interesting.
Yeah.
There was a situation here where like the USPS they ran out of trucks, I guess, one year, and it was right around Christmas. And my best friend ordered one of those like gamer chairs, and it got to like Roseville, Michigan, which is right down the road from where he lives. And they were like, well, we're out of trucks. So they started renting U-Hauls to deliver mail in, but then they'd have to return the U-Hauls at the end of the day and like mail would get left in there. And his chair was just moving all over Michigan. Like he could see it on the map. And then it was like 2 months later, it just showed up and he's like, I don't even want it anymore.
It's on some sort of journey. Yeah, exactly. And it's been on some sort of weird journey, you know,
just give the money back, whatever.
Foreign packages often arrive in America and disappear off the grid. Like you can't track them anymore. And then I think this PlayAsia does this. And then shit just randomly comes out of nowhere.
I've had that happen from them.
And then you go to the other side, like PlayStation Portal just came out and I just received mine in the mail from PlayStation Direct. And it's like, you wonder how they staged that to get that to you so quickly. Like the totally other direction. Very interesting. Anyway, we're way off on a tangent here.
Sorry.
No,
it's a good topic, actually.
These are good. Now, I'm gonna go first this week, and because typically we bury our more political and divisive stuff deeper in the show so people can skip it more easily. However, I don't think this should be divisive or political in any sense, and I just want to say something, and it doesn't have to be a very long topic. We can talk about however you guys want. We all know what's going on in the Middle East right now. Well, I mean, that's a very wide thing to say. There's all sorts of shit going on in the Middle East right now, from Saudi Arabia and Yemen and all the rest, but in Palestine and Israel, and their kind of conflict with each other that's ongoing since the 40s and really since even before the war in some sense, World War II. And I've said in the past that I want to try to avoid more divisive topics just because I feel like people are tired of hearing about them. Not necessarily that I'm afraid of the reaction that people would have to them, because people have known me for a very long time and I kind of just say whatever anyway. And that's, you either just take it or leave it, I suppose. But I want I know people are looking for refuge from that kind of stuff too, and I don't want to put those people off, but I feel like I've been a coward in some sense, not speaking out about Israel and Palestine, which I think is, as I said in a previous episode, as we were just talking about it in passing, the single deepest geopolitical question on planet Earth, like by a mile. And it's hard to even begin to know how to fix that or where the problems begin and end. But what I do know is that I am very confident in tackling the topic of anti-Semitism. And I've been reading a lot lately, and not just stuff like Charles Murray or like dudes like that, but like, or I'm sorry, not Charles Murray, Douglas Murray. Charles Murray is that old writer, that divisive old writer, right? That wrote about populations. Anyway, and I've been reading a lot of these different guys in Britain and in the United States and all of this different stuff about anti-Semitism and the rise of this thread of it that I thought was gone. And I think that you always expect to see it in certain countries and maybe certain parts of the world. And that's kind of, I don't want to say fine, but that's their issue to worry about, I guess. But seeing it pop up in the United States and in Western Europe so virulently in the last month and a half has been disconcerting, because I thought we kind of purged this from Western thought. And what's real about it to me is that it's not the case. And that not only is it not the case, and this is where Douglas Murray comes in, where I've been reading a lot of him and others. He wrote The Strange Death of Europe, I think, and stuff like that. A lot of things I haven't read, but I've been kind of more aware of him lately. And some of his essays and all of this is it's back, and it's always been right under the surface. And we've been kind of lying to ourselves that it's been gone. And I don't really understand it. And I have a deep bias towards this. Dagan might feel the same. I don't really know, because of where we're from. As I've said, and this has been said before, like New York City has more Jews in it than Tel Aviv, or I guess the second most outside of Tel Aviv. And we're on Long Island. And so Long Island is it's Long Island, parts of Florida, and so on, that and parts of LA that have the biggest Jewish populations outside of Israel. And so we grew up in a heavily Jewish area, not where there's a majority Jewish or anything, but 1 in 6, 1 in 7 people, Jewish, practicing Jewish at school or whatever.
Sure.
And
yeah,
knowing people, our grandparents' neighbors, longtime neighbors on Long Island, they were really sweet family, and the grandparents of that family, I don't know if you remember this, Dagan, the one of them had like the camp numbers tattooed on them.
Yeah.
And like when you
Had,
see
like, the
that stuff,
barcode.
like when you're a kid, you're like, and it instills something like deep in you. And people have asked me recently, like, Colin, are you a Zionist? And I'm like, well, I'm not Jewish, so I'm not a Zionist per se, but I believe in a sense of Zionism or the right to return and all of that. And I know that that's where a lot of the anti-Semitism comes from. But if you read about the history of anti-Semitism, you realize that it's older than Christianity. And it goes back to like the Romans and pagans really beating the shit out of Jews first. And then, of course, the Christians, and then, of course, the Muslims. And then, of course, you get Europe, Russia, everyone just kicking them out from place to place, leading up to the Holocaust. And Zionism really coming from the 19th century, this kind of like right to return and have their own Jewish state. And I wonder how you guys feel about it, if you've noticed it. I didn't think people were comfortable enough to hold a sign up with a person, like the famous throwing garbage away sign you would see in front of like a 7-Eleven, the person throwing, but like with a Jewish star.
That was crazy.
And I was like, this is in New York?
Yeah. Like, I was like,
It's
that can't surely be in the United States. I was like, oh, okay. All right. That's wild.
We hear a lot about, and I've said before that I think that this is way overblown, and it's true, but we hear about this problem of systemic white supremacy and like the KKK and all of this and Nazis. And I'm like, I've never seen a collective like what I saw over the last few weeks waving symbols of hate basically in any number like I just saw, compared to what you say is the boogeyman lurking around. And by the way, anti-Semitism is a right-wing problem and a left-wing problem. It depends on how you look at it. I mean, the Nazis were profoundly right-wing, so some people would say that they were so right-wing that they were left-wing, and I guess that's true in some sense. But anyway, I've said a lot. I'm really troubled by it. And I guess I wanted to present it to you guys because old Colin, IGN Colin, let's say, certainly kind of funny Colin, would have been all over this. And in my real world, I'm reading a lot about it. I reached out to pretty much every Jewish person that I know that I still talk to in any way. From Neil Druckmann to my friend Abby back in school, one of my best friends in college, to old friends from Long Island, to dudes I met through New York Islander fan clubs and fellow Jets fans and all of these things, and spoke to a lot of people. I spoke to my friends in Israel. As people know, I've done consultant work for companies in Israel, and so I have some friends there. And they're not in good shape. And it's scary for them because there's this perniciousness about anti-Semitism where it just kind of never goes away. And just, it's like a multi-headed dragon that just pops back up for different reasons and different blame games and different blood libel, and it just bums me out. And what I want to be clear about is that it doesn't mean that there's not anti-Muslim hate or anti-Arab hate. Doesn't mean that there aren't other horrifying things going on in the world. What I'm really targeted right now with my topic is just this specific thing that I've seen rise, and I'm not feeling it. And you know what fucking bothers me the most as I kick it over to you guys and let you hear what you guys have to say about it? As someone who was educated at, a somewhat well-known university in the United States, these are the places that are fucking manufacturing this. And I don't understand what has happened in the last 15 or 20 years since I've been there that makes it so that people are comfortable being, to the point where we have, and not for nothing, we have German people doing things where it's like, dude, we definitely don't need to hear from you on this topic. Like, I would say the next time I want to hear anything from a German's mouth about a Jewish anything is probably 2200. I would say at that point, the year 2200. At that point, we'll let it go. So anyway, that aside, Jimmy, what do you think about this? Let's get you in here first as the guest. I know this is a heavy topic, but I'm wondering if it's smart for us to go first on it, bring a spotlight to it, talk about what's happening. And again, leaving the whole geopolitical issue aside, because I think that that's a complex situation that deserves its own topic and its own conversation, but just the plight of anti-Semitism and the comfort people have in it. I'm concerned about it. I wonder if you share that.
I definitely share that because like I moved back from LA to the like greater Detroit area, right? And like since I moved back, I've been trying to really be conscious about what is an issue that Twitter is making an issue for me, like making an issue like that's so far away from me, like geographically, that does it really affect me right now? Is it worth spending my like emotional energy on for that day? And really trying to think local and work on things that I can change in my like surrounding area, which obviously is a lot easier to do in a small suburb of Detroit than it is in just like greater Los Angeles. And this has made it very hard to do that. It's like something I think about all the time because when I was growing up, it's like every piece of media is just very pointedly cut and dry, tells you exactly how it is, right? Like World War II, Nazis are the bad guys, got to protect Jewish people. They were like super unfairly targeted for all this stuff for no reason other than just straight up hatred. That's bad. So you've got like Call of Duty, you've got Medal of Honor, you've got Band of Brothers and Saving Private Ryan, like endless World War II movies. It's all set up. I'm like, cool, this is like a done and over with issue. And then going into my like mid to late 20s, I had never really like witnessed in real life any sort of anti-Semitism in my like periphery. And I was like, cool, maybe this really is like we're moving on from it. And it is absolutely wild to see just in a matter of like a month how open and just happy it seems like people are to have the excuse in their heart now and just to have actual hate for people. Because I don't know, I try to keep things like, is it affecting me? No, I'm not going to like let it bother me. I don't like teach their own. Of course, also living in Detroit, you've got a place like Hamtramck or Dearborn where I think it's the biggest practicing Muslim population outside of like the Middle East. And then you do have a bigger Jewish population, which is a little farther outside of Detroit, which is in like the West Bloomfield, Birmingham area. And they're about equidistant from where I'm at. And I've seen on like the local news and the internet and everything, like the stuff you were talking about with those signs and just straight up hate. And I know like the algorithm and everything kind of points what it thinks you want to see. So you really only get one side of a scenario, but it really does suck that it seems like people who were waiting for an excuse finally got it. And now they are totally taking advantage of it. And it's really sad. Like, cause my wife actually works out closer to West Bloomfield and Birmingham, and the amount of people are like coming over there to cause problems and like start things, like it makes her life hard, which sucks because her life was hard in Los Angeles, which is a big reason why we moved over here. And now she's like, out of no fault of her own, been thrust back into it. And it makes their life really hard because it's like people showing up on their doorstep to like hate them. And I don't like that, obviously. So like I don't have any solution to present, obviously, but it is a bummer. And it just seems like to me something that you can't look at as a macro level thing that you don't really have to worry about in your day to day, because it has been inserted into my day to day, like to no fault of my own, really.
Yeah, it's well said. It makes me feel like it just feels like there's two Americas sometimes. And there's this and there's this one America that is multicultural, I think even multipolar in terms of its politics, that is just constant revolution. And it's really what you learn about. I mean, you read about this stuff it's so weird how it's only recently, even after studying history in college and being obsessed with it so long, that I've started to connect the present with the past in such an intimate way where I'm like, wow, it really hasn't changed at all. Actually, there's just, you read about the Russian Revolution, or you read about the French Revolution, the American Revolution, which was an unusually right-wing revolution. There was just constant agitation for years and years and years and years and years, like trying to get something going off. You think about the Sons of Liberty and in Boston in the 1760s, just like constantly trying to get something set off. And feels like that kind of agitation is what we see all the time. So they're just waiting for almost anything, like you said, to happen. And then they suddenly appear. It could be the death of a black man at the hands of a police officer. It could be Palestine, Israel. It can be it was Ukraine, Russia.
Yeah.
It's going to be China and Taiwan inevitably when that goes down.
It's crazy how there's always a new thing. Like when something starts to, calm down a little bit, it feels like lately, since, I don't know, this is when I became conscious of it, I guess, but like 2020, there's always the next thing that's going to incite people to get upset and show it publicly. And it feels like nothing can ever calm down, which really sucks because, growing up in the 90s, I feel like it was a pretty chill time to be an American, especially a kid. I mean, up until 2001, obviously, but like I've never been nostalgic for like a time period until right around when I hit like 27, 28 years old, and things just, it seems like unending strife no matter what. And mentally it's tough because you always have something where you're like, man, can't just like wake up and go a whole day without someone having a massive issue that I have to like be conscious about now. And that really blows.
Yeah. And you're right. 90s is like peak Pax Americana. Like I think in hindsight, like definitely will be looked back at as like some interesting time where even when we had foreign conflict, like we did in Desert Storm, we just dominated them. Like no one died basically on our side. And we were just like, oh yeah, we're in and out. We're fucking awesome. Team America, go, go, go. And I think 9/11 beat the shit out of us in that sense, but that's another topic entirely. Dustin, where are you on this? You're in Western Pennsylvania, which itself has a decent sized Jewish population.
Right.
In Pittsburgh. And that was the scene of a synagogue shooting, wasn't it? Just a couple of years ago.
I was gonna bring that up.
Yeah. So I leave it to you. I wonder if you're noticing this rise in virulent anti-Semitism as well, post October attack. And again, divorced from what's going on in Israel and Palestine, because notice we're really not talking about that. It's about something deeper and something longer lasting.
Yeah. So the interesting part is that here in my hometown of Butler, there is a synagogue, but I'm pretty sure that it's a pretty small community there, to the point where even growing up, there was maybe one or two kids in my class that were practicing Jews. So they're present here in Butler, but it's not, I like personally don't know anyone who is practicing here in my area. My main interaction with the synagogue is that they have like a rummage sale every year I go to, and I got Sonic Adventure on Dreamcast for $1. And they were very nice. So that was a good time. But you're right in that Pittsburgh, that's where there is large Jewish communities. And just this, when was this? 2018 was when the Tree of Life shooting happened. And the connection there, Holly was in a choir in Pittsburgh where a lot of the people in the choir, I don't think anyone in the choir was a casualty of the shooting, but people went to that synagogue. And so it was a really tough time for people in that, I mean, in the greater community in general, but just specifically where Holly was plugged in. So it definitely can hit close to home here. I remember when they got the shooter, there was a big hubbub because he was being held in the prison in Butler, like less than a mile from my house. And it was one of those things where you're not scared or worried that he's going to get out. It's just, there's something disturbing about knowing someone doing something so evil being so close. So Colin, what I really want to touch on though is something you said, which really is something I've been thinking about, is that about the education of things and how it's changed. Growing up for us, and it may still be this way, I honestly don't know, but we had a lot of education around anti-Semitism, the Holocaust. We read Night by Elie Wiesel, which is like one of the best books I ever got to read during my time in high school. And it was all very clear. There was really no question about right and wrong. And like I said, maybe they still read those books today. But this past week, what really, really was disturbing, and maybe you guys saw this, Jimmy, I'm sure you did, there was that whole people on TikTok had discovered this letter that Osama bin Laden
wrote.
Yeah. And there were all these kids on TikTok that were like, when you see the Osama bin Laden letter, but then you realize he's right because of how, talking about, because in the letter, there are portions that talk about, being oppressed and a lot of the Israel Palestine stuff that we're seeing today. They didn't read some of the other parts of the letter, though, clearly. But the fact that it's one of those disturbing things now where kids on TikTok are so far removed from 9/11 and from what happened there that I just am disturbed that I don't know if it's the education isn't there or people there's like, no, there is no redeeming qualities about anything Osama bin Laden did, period. That to me, that's so fucking obvious. And I'm sure it's obvious to all four of us in this call who, we were alive when 9/11 happened. But what is fucking happening that there are kids that see this shit and then are like, oh, I can make a nice social media post about how I'm different. I thought Osama bin Laden had some good points. Just completely insane to me. Obviously, there's tons of crazy shit on TikTok, but
yeah,
it just goes to wonder, that's what made me question, how is it that this happened? What are these kids not being taught or told to make them understand what we consider basic fundamentals? And that's what's so scary is that these are the kids now are going to be the citizens of they're citizens now, but they are going to be the core in the future. So what does that say? So I don't know. Like I said, this isn't something that interacts with me on a day-to-day basis, but I see shit like this and I'm like, oh man, it makes you, think about I guess there's sometimes points where I'm like, man, how could I want to have a kid in a world like this where it's like, what are my kids going to be taught in schools? What are they going to be seeing? What are their friends going to be saying? But it's like at the same time, it's like, no, you got to be the other side of that. That's why this shit happens, is because we need people to have kids that are, that are reasonably taught and understand and can speak for truth.
Oh my God. I would never, I don't want to say never, but it's hard for me to imagine that if I had kids, I would send them to public school. No offense.
Well, dude, that's the thing now. It just feels
have them potentially subjected to that sort of thing. I know we have many public school teachers in our family. They're awesome people. They're not the ones doing this, but how much evidence of that do you have to see that kind of stuff is happening before you're like this just level of complete indoctrination? It's strange.
And it seems like there's a lot of fight against homeschooling now, which I've never heard growing up. I know a lot of kids who are homeschooled, which was always odd to me because I live now and grew up in an area where the school system is second to none, the public school system. People try to figure out ways to say oh, because my kids' grandparents live in this town, they'll drive their kids over there at 5 a.m. and have them be in their trunk and then have the kids run out the trunk into the back of the grandparents' house and then walk to school from the grandparents' house. That's the level that people want to be in the school system. And there were still quite a few homeschooled kids that I would meet through intramurals or my brother and I did Taekwondo and everything. And they turn out to be totally fine, right? You'd think they wouldn't be socially well adjusted or anything, but I still talk to a few of them and they're great kids and great adults now. And to see that could go away as an option. It's scary to know that you could have a kid and everything is just so predetermined on what that kid is going to experience and learn. Whereas before, it feels like my parents at least got a pretty high level of choice in what school I went to or, where I ended up.
Yeah, I knew it's the same for me. I knew homeschooled kids that were totally well adjusted. I think because a lot of homeschooling parents know to over adjust to accommodate the difference in just the natural societal kind of makeup of a first grader that goes into school for 6 hours a day and then does that over and over and over again. You have to compensate for that. And so I think I agree with you. I think school choice and all that's really important, just the ability to educate your children the way you want to. But that's also another topic. I'm going to write that down as well, because sometimes when I'm doing this show, I'm like, damn, why can't I think of anything good today? Because I don't like having these huge ledgers of I find lists of things just very overwhelming. And then I'm like, oh yeah, that would be an interesting one. Just education and school choice. That'd be fun. Now, Dig, let's go to you. You grew up where I grew up, so you understand what I am saying, I think.
Definitely.
And I think that that sort of thing, I don't know. I guess I never really thought about it. It just kind of embedded itself in me because it's not a right wing or a left wing thing. Like I said, there's sympathies on both sides. Some of the Israeli, actually many of the Israeli people I knew, including this girl I went to college with, were actually quite left wing, but they all joined the IDF and they're all, like whatever. So there's all this like this collectiveness about them over there in Israel that I guess we just embedded ourselves in as children in the interaction with the Jewish faith, which itself is kind of an emanation of that country, that there's something to protecting these people or being cognizant of history in terms of the way these people have been treated over and over and over again. And I actually think the United States has a special kind of obligation, if anything, towards Jewry, if you would say that, in the sense that there's that famous story of us rebuffing people that were trying to escape Nazi Germany, knowing that we were going to send them back and they were going to get put in the gas chambers, and they were, by the hundreds and thousands. And we knew, right, like that was happening to some degree. We didn't know the depth of it. We didn't know how mechanized it was, but we knew that these people were in deep shit, and we still sent a lot of them back. And I just don't know how we can live with ourselves if we just aren't cognizant of the plight of Jewish people simply to exist. And I don't know. I'm wondering where you take it. I imagine you feel the same way I do.
I mean, where do I even start with this, right? I mean, I agree with what you said earlier, Kyle. This unexpected turn, this huge uptick in sudden blatant anti-Semitism is certainly unexpected, right? And I mean, obviously, it's insert adjective here, right? Disgusting, unacceptable, juvenile. It's like any form of hatred, right? Bias, racism, bigotry. You're putting everybody of a people into a box. It's fucking, I'm sorry to use the word, it's fucking retarded. I could tell you as a father of two, okay, that my kids knew better by the time they were 6. Like, it's fucking, and not only that, but like boil it down to brass tacks. Like this is on some, like, I thought we settled this when we won World War II shit. Like, this is some Adolf Hitler shit. I mean, what else do you call it? You know what I mean? And listen, like, I know there's a million different ways I could go with this. I could talk about this for hours, but I know the Israel-Palestine conflict is complicated. I know it's more complicated than I could even pretend to understand. There's so much nuance to it and everything. And I'll tell you, I've been thinking about this a lot lately. So it kind of dovetails with this topic, and I'm happy to talk about it in like a therapy capacity almost, in that I'm certainly guilty, and I have to work on this. Like, when something's happening in the world day to day, I'm not great at paying attention until shit hits the fan. So like, for instance, with Israel, Palestine now, I pay attention. And then what ends up happening is I carry around my general sentiments. It's a very heart heavy philosophy. I kind of judge everything on an emotional basis, but I don't really have facts. So what I do is I say, okay, I would really like to be able to, as a human being on Earth, form an educated opinion of this. So I dig down and I research and I try to learn. And it's complicated because I have to dig back and I have to learn about what happened before. And, I have to get myself up to speed. And every time I do that, you know where I land? I land back as an 8-year-old, just being like, you know what? Violence begets violence. Like, I come right back full circle to where I started, despite the education, despite digging down and researching, despite learning the facts. And there's something to, I think we are very fortunate, Colin and I, especially where we grew up in New York, specifically on Long Island, in the suburbs. It really was a melting pot. We were all integrated. And I just channel what it felt like to be in grade school. And honestly, guys, not even realize who was Jewish, who was Catholic, who was Protestant. No idea. There are people that I think about now, like schoolmates that I knew for 10, 12 years, that we just kind of, I haven't thought about, let's say, in 20 years. And I'll think about, oh, Peter, you know what? He was Jewish. I never even realized it. I graduated from high school, went to college, kind of forgot about this guy, not even realized it. Now, I dated Jewish girls in high school, a couple at least, right?
I mean,
now obviously you go to, they're usually beautiful, right? oftentimes beautiful. I mean, who can resist? Now, listen, I'm not an idiot. When I go to their house and there's no Christmas decorations and there's a menorah, obviously you know they're Jewish. But that's really as far as it didn't matter. It honestly did not matter. Like, it really wasn't even a thing that we paid attention to. I can honestly tell you that. You know, we were just we were neighbors geographically. We went to the same schools. The Jewish culture and the Jewish people and the Jewish religion, you know, the synagogues were right on the same block as the Catholic Church. You know, whatever other religion, the mosque, whatever. It really didn't matter. I mean, I think we were very fortunate the way we grew up. My kids are in the suburbs of a big city too, here in Philly. It's a very similar thing. Like, I'm even thinking as you guys are talking, my daughter, my oldest, is having a Friendsgiving tonight at the house, and she's having like 15 people over.
Oh, wow.
And I'm just kind of thinking about, that's going to
be a lot.
That's a topic for another day. I'll let you know how that goes. We'll be hiding up here for sure. But I'm just thinking about her friend group, and probably a third of them are Jewish. And most of those kids are from families with one Jewish parent. So in other words, a Catholic and a Protestant married to a Jewish person. Sometimes the mom's Jewish, sometimes the dad. So again, very, very integrated. And my kids were not only educated that way, but they also just saw it. They were around it. It was that sentiment of, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We're all people. We're all human beings, flesh and blood. Again, that whole thing of just boiling it down to the most base thing, which is just humanity. And the other thing I want to say is where I get worried a little bit. You know what this reminds me of? Go back to electing our first black president, right? A decade or so ago. It felt, I was a much younger person then, but even then it felt like progress to me. It felt like, all right, this is a step in the right direction. As somebody who's very racially sensitive and wanting to see progress, and, you know, being a student of civil rights and human rights and all the great civil rights leaders of the past, and I'm fascinated with it. And I've always been very much cut from that cloth. I don't even know why. A lot of it has to do with the way I was raised and where I'm from, I guess, you know. But then you flash forward to 2020, you got this rash of racial riots, upheaval, right? And basically largely in reaction to police brutality. And it felt like the progress wasn't really progress. And it's very frustrating. And that could be very disheartening. And it really could get me dejected and feeling like everything, those 2 steps forward, now feel like 3 steps back. And that's what it feels like with this. It's like, I thought the anti-Semitism thing was done. Like, I thought we moved on. Like, I thought we acknowledged that was wrong. We helped fight for that. It's kind of interwoven into the fabric of our country in a lot of ways over, you know, since World War II, let's be honest. You think back to that. And it's like, oh, so there was never any progress. Like, it just feels like nothing's ever done. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that's a really, really troublesome sentiment to me. It feels like nothing's ever closed, which really helps. It brings out the pessimist in me, because it makes me feel like when things feel right, or it feels like there's forward momentum, it's just that people are just burying their feelings or faking it or not being transparent with it. So it was really shocking. The other thing I saw was some of my Jewish friends that are around my age, like my contemporaries, friends of our kids' parents and stuff like that, people in our community. I saw right away something that upset me for them, for those Jewish people, those adults. They were very quick to jump on social media and be very pro-Israel. And it felt like a thing where they felt like they didn't want to waste any time, and they wanted to express solidarity from the outset in order to avoid confrontation, if that makes sense. Like, in order to kind of just get out there in the open now, and let's just and it seemed like they wanted to do it, but at the same time, in the same breath, they were worried to do it. And I was like, where are we living? We're in the United States in 2023. You can't express solidarity with a place that you go to twice a year, where maybe some of your family even still lives for a lot of these people that I know. I think it's pretty gross. And it doesn't even matter how you feel. Like, there's a lot to, I don't want to get into Israel Palestine right now. I know it's complicated, but you can't, the blatant sort of one stroke hatred is, I don't even understand. It's so ridiculous that it even defies articulation to me. I don't even understand how you, it would be like me feeling like, well, every Muslim was the problem, or every person in Hamas, or every person, in Iran. Like, it's unbelievable to me. I cannot believe that we keep circling back to this. It's just absolute insanity.
Yeah.
And I don't understand. I mean, maybe there's no way to get rid of the that general sentiment of hatred, but it feels like every time we have a victory, it's not really a victory. It's
well, because it seemed like, and again, it's it gets into Israel's existence at all, and whether you believe it really should exist or not. I mean, I that's why I try to divorce the two things, because it's like you were saying earlier, actually, Dustin, when you brought up the 9/11 stuff and the letter to America from bin Laden. It's a compelling read. Like, I remember reading it at the time, and I read it since, now that it came back up or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, it's like Ron Paul used to say, in my opinion, I don't think it actually is maybe as black and white as Dustin would think it is or whatever, where I'm like, I think it's very similar to what I actually think about what Hamas just did, where it's like the cause of your anger is somewhere rooted in some sort of reality, certainly, enough that you have this fervent religious belief about it. Whether or not that's like really true in the deepest sense of reality, I guess, is a different story. But it's like Ron Paul used to get pilloried back in the day, my boy, because he used to say, like, we're fucking around, and this is finding out. Don't you understand that there are repercussions for the things you do? And I'm like, yeah, that's probably true. I just think that I wouldn't fly airplanes into buildings and kill a bunch of innocent people. And so the thing with Hamas was where it's like, yeah, there's this revolutionary furor to be free and all of that. I just don't know that I'd go and rape women at a music festival and just go kill old people at a kibbutz and shit. Like, I just don't think that that's the way. And people would say, well, that like anti-colonialism in quotes and revolution is violent. And I'm like, yeah, it is, but aren't there just rules to reason and like combatants, like, just remove it from international law, like just the very things that you believe in as a human. Like, there's the fucking Iron Age pillaging of kibbutzes to the point of like literally taking women, like your Vikings, that's not something I'm going to root for in any circumstance. Like, I don't think that is a form of collective punishment. And then I think that where it gets complicated is that there's no easy and clean way to do what Israel feels like it needs to do. And that is just going to create more terrorists.
Yeah.
And
I think you're right.
That's why I truly believe, like, central to this, and I've said this in the past many times, is that I don't think we should be involved in this. Doesn't mean that the CIA can't be like fucking around in the background. It doesn't mean that the military can't give intelligence, but we shouldn't be involved in it, because like Donald Trump almost had people were circulating it as being like, this is kind of an interesting take, where he was like, sometimes you just got to sit back and just watch what happens, see what happens. And it's like, yeah, I guess it really, but if it comes to the question of like the eradication of one side or the other, I think that we as a people need to think about, maybe through the United Nations or something, stepping in. I don't know. But so that's why I wanted to divorce the two things, because I do think that situation is fucking crazy. Like, I don't know that there even is a solution to that. As I said on a recent episode, Dag, unrelated to it, it's like you would almost want to give one side or the other an entirely different plot of land in some random country and be like, we'll just give you this to just diffuse this. And I was saying how there used to be conversation way back in the day that would be Alaska.
But such a big part of the problem is that specific
right, exactly. It's that neither side, but the side who capitulated, even though they would get the better end of the bargain in the long term feels like they're losing because that's their spot. And what the sad reality about it and why I don't really like talking about it is that I am pretty fatalistic about it. Like I think it's just going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. There have been 7 proposals for a 2-state solution that the Israelis have accepted, or the 6 or something like that, going back to the Peel Commission, and it's just not going to happen, I don't think. And so and there's not going to be a 1-state pluralistic society because that is Israel. But if it's really encompassing that entire landmass, then there's just going to be rampant terrorism and sectarian violence, and it's going to be crazy. So that's why I'm like, I don't even know what you want us to do about that. But what we can do is at least be there for a people, give them a place to be, or at least be heard. I don't know that we should be like taking in tons of anyone, to be honest. And that the responsibility towards the people in that area probably are the countries in that area, very similar to how I feel like the kind of the forgotten people of Central and South America are somewhat our problem because this is our hemisphere and they kind of feed into our country, and there's this sucking kind of motion towards the United States.
Yeah.
And so like we do have to deal with that and like the repercussions of that economically, socially, like whether or not we want to bury our heads in the sand, that is the reality, but it's not that way on the other side of the world. And I just wish other entities would step in that regard. Who could really help the Palestinians? One solution would be if Egypt took Gaza and Jordan took the West Bank. And that would be the end of that, and then Israel would just exist in the between those two things. And that was kind of the status quo at various times. But the reality is that the Egyptians do not like the Palestinians and the Jordanians do not like the Palestinians. And so it is so much more complicated than we could ever imagine. That's why it's like, and people are wrapping it all up into one thing. And I just don't think that that's wise, because it's like when people say, oh, from the river to the sea or whatever, it's like, I don't know about that, dude. Do you know what that means? The Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. So no Israel there. I mean, that's what you're saying. So I can't get behind that either,
It's complicated, man. And what another complication, if you want to call it that, or just something that's really deeply nuanced, is the United States' deep-seated relationship with Israel. You can't undo that now. It's like I even know what you're saying, and I know that's a pretty popular sentiment, is just abstain, but really can't. I mean, I guess there is some, I don't know whether we can or not, but there is a large sentiment that those bonds are so strong or so deep-seated, or, they go back so far. We're so intertwined with Israel that there's really no way to undo that. Or undoing that would be, in some way insane or nonsensical, or, it's like we're in it, and I mean, I guess other places by proxy feel the same way. Other places on Earth feel the same way. Like they're tied to it's a conflict. It's complicated, but it is that generalized anti-Semitism that's sprung out of this, largely out of this. Like, let's be honest, is really kind of shocking. I would have never seen this coming a year ago. Never, not the conflict itself, because that seems to be an ongoing thing, but just the reaction. This specific reaction definitely surprises me. I think it says a lot about the climate in the country too.
Yeah, it's dark time right now, I think. Actually, I think it was Vivek Ramaswamy said something about that I only watched the first debate. It's become clear that Trump is going to be the nominee. So it's like, why even bother even paying attention to this? It's like watching, like, I don't know, AA baseball or something, and with like meaningless results. But he said something, and people were kind of judgmental about him. And I'm not crazy about everything he says, but he said something along the lines of like, we are in a dark time. This is a dark period. Like, you need to be aware that this isn't Pax Americana or some time of free, of vibrant free will and economies that are buzzing and all this. Like, everything's a little fucked up right now. And this is definitely a big part of it. And what do you guys think about this as we exit? And I guess this is more about the Palestinian and Israeli thing than just anti-Semitism. And I'm glad you guys were able to talk to me about it. I thought this was a good group for the conversation. And I'm glad, by the way, on a personal level, I kind of had the courage to say about it because I, for some reason, I felt cowed in some way, like you can't get involved in this. And I don't want to be involved in it, but there's got to be a way to say something in an appropriate venue. And I feel like this is the venue for it. It's not sacred symbols. It's not knockback, all those other things. But I listened to the philosopher Brett Weinstein. I don't know if you guys listen to him at all. Dark Horse podcast.
Love him.
And so you'll be familiar with this maybe, Dig. He has this notion. So I don't know much about it, but I do remember it. There was this Pakistani attack on an Indian hotel, I think, something like that. Do you guys remember this in like 2008, 2009? And it was by these Muslim extremists. They killed like a couple hundred people.
Oh, yeah, vaguely.
And he was arguing that the government response at that time was to do nothing. And he was arguing on a recent podcast that I was listening to that I thought was interesting of like, what if Israel's response to terrorism and to the rape of its people and to the destruction, like they lost the equivalent of 22,000 people, I think, if this is the United States population. So
wow.
So a significant, it's like multiple 9/11s for them basically per capita because there's not that many of them. But he was like, what if they just responded with acts of kindness and literally stayed in this entire lane of like, we are not fighting you back? Would, no matter what, like an almost pacifist stance, would that turn the tide because people would eventually see? Well, first of all, maybe that would be exactly what the Palestinians would need to see that they need to calm their side down too. Remembering, of course, things like Hamas was elected, although there was no elections after that. So just like the Nazis were elected, right? And once you elect this fucking parasite, it doesn't go. It uses that to bolster its legitimacy. But what if they just didn't fight? That's almost impossible for me to imagine because I know that if what happened there happened here, that it would be so bad for the like whatever, like whoever perpetrated it, it would not even be fucking funny how bad it would be for them, and we wouldn't be having these conversations.
No. Kyle,
So knowing that, I don't think I would ever buy into that, but isn't there something to that of just saying like, we're just not fighting back?
I mean, I honestly, there are many days where I feel like that's the only way. I don't even know if you remember, but a couple of weeks ago, we talked about just this. I heard a news story on NPR, happened to be on the radio. There was a random Israeli civilian who lost a daughter.
Oh, right. That's right.
In one of the bombings. And I think it was a previous episode. I don't think it was this particular conflict. And she was saying, even as somebody who is directly tied, like it couldn't have hit more home for her because she lost a daughter. And she was like, literally the only way. And she was by no means an military expert. She wasn't a political expert. She was just a human being who suffered as a direct result of this conflict. And she was saying the only way to do this is after an act of violence to not react in vengeance. In other words, to de-escalate after a bombing, after a raid, after some kind of military operation. The only way is to not strike back. And to extend and to in fact extend an olive branch at that point. And I think to a lot of people, even as I'm saying that, it sounds like craziness in some way, right? To not react, to not want to exact some type of vengeance, to not want revenge, to not fight for your side, to feel like you're cowing, But I honestly, I think there's a great power in that. I think it would take incredible amount of strength and fortitude to be able to do that. I don't think that would be easy.
Yeah, I don't think it's really doable. That's why I'm saying, like, if we had a per capita attack like that, so like 22,000 Americans were killed in this like incursion on the Mexican border by a drug cartel, let's say, and they like went crazy in El Paso and literally killed everybody that they encountered.
Right.
They would be so deeply fucked. And everyone in that entire location, it would be a Dresden situation probably for them, where it'd be like, it would just be this horrible reaction, right? And so I know,
you almost couldn't even
I'm not saying that's right or wrong, by the way, it's wrong because collective punishment is wrong. But what I'm saying is that I know that it's easy for us to prognosticate an ocean away when knowing if that happened to us, man, people would be fucking raging.
Calling for heads.
Yeah. And it is true that Israel's often expected to say like, whoa, wait a minute.
Right.
And that is kind of probably frustrating for them,
Well, it's the epitome of easier said than done.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the whole thing of like, yeah, let's say there was some mass injustice, a million innocents were killed. And the reaction from us was, okay, let's sit down at the table and see how we can work this out. Everybody would be up in arms.
There's like so many people right now that are excited that it's happening, and they have followings on Twitter and everywhere. They're too good at riling people up. And I've noticed now more than ever before that media literacy is just not a thing. There have been so many events over the past month on Twitter. I like kind of wrote down, I don't even have to bring them up because I'm sure you guys know, where it's like, as soon as it happens, it's like, oh, Israel did this, Israel did this, Israel did this. And then it's like, just wait a day. And it turns out that then maybe that wasn't the case, or in reverse, like Hamas did this. Turns out it wasn't the case. You never see people double back and say like, well, I was wrong on that. They just keep pushing it, because if you keep pushing something that supports your narrative, like eventually to the collective, especially on your side, it becomes true. And that seems to be the ultimate goal for a lot of people. Like anything they have to do to make the other side the bad guy, they will do. And that's where I just like had to delete the X app off my phone and just feel like I can't think about this. Like it's just creating too many things for me to be upset about that are not relevant to the issue in my mind. Like I love what you're saying about, it reminds me of The Last of Us Part 2, ironically, like that coming back around with this remaster, like where that game ends up and everything. I was thinking about that for so long, because when you go into that game, you're like, yeah, Ellie's totally justified. Like, do what you got to do. And then I think making that game as long as it is and making you do so many terrible things as Ellie, it's like comes back around and you're like, maybe it would have just been better if she just let it go. You know, like it probably would have been, and almost assuredly would have been. And the farther I get away from that game, the more I'm like, yeah, it would have been just better if she just let it go. Like, you don't have to like the person, obviously, who.
Oh, you got to beep that out.
Yeah. Oh shit. Yeah.
People are very well. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Last of Us. Yeah. Beep it. You don't have to like
spoilers.
The bad guy, but you could just accept that they exist and not cross their path intentionally. You know.
Yeah. It's funny. People have been saying because The Last of Us Part 2 is an allegory for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict in some sense. And I think Neil's talked about that.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. That it's funny that it's coming back to PlayStation 5, imminently, and people it's like the perfect time.
That's crazy. And it's cheap to get into. It's like, I don't know. That's going to be a whole nother thing. I already know it.
I know it's going to be totally unbearable and obnoxious. But I think on this topic, I mean, I'm satisfied here. I'm glad we were able to talk about it. Again, it's not to the exclusion of all of the other bad things that are happening in the world and all of the people that are downtrodden in the world. Again, including the other side of this conflict in some sense. I'm not talking about Hamas, but the Palestinians certainly got to figure this thing out for them and their happiness and willingness to live productive lives too. But that's not even really what I wanted to talk about was the conflict, although we ended up talking about it anyway. And I think that's natural. It's really just more about this deep-seated hate and why I think it's so important to treat people as individuals and not as parts of groups, because it actually reminds me, Dagan, I was thinking, one of the times I used to go fly to Dagan's house when I lived in LA every couple of months to record episodes, like batches of episodes of Knockback. And so I would take these hour-long Uber rides to his house, basically with like random, Uber person. And one of them was like this Palestinian dude in this decked out, Palestinian flag decked out car. And I got into it and I was like, well, first I was like, oh boy, in my mind, like, what am I going to be dealing with here? And I got in and it's like, well, I don't know why he wanted to flash it like that. That's totally cool. This was probably in like 2018, something like that. But we ended up having a really great conversation about all sorts of things that never came up. It doesn't matter because like, it doesn't really matter.
It doesn't.
And I just want to continue to treat individuals not out of the pockets they come from, but just who they are, because I think that's probably the only way we can break the cycle too, is to kind of continue to mix up in a melting pot, not in the sense that we have to share. I've said before, I don't think all cultures and civilizations are equal. I don't, but it doesn't mean that people aren't born free with the ability to appreciate and live in any system in which they're basically indoctrinated into, like we were indoctrinated into our system. And it happened to be a pretty positive thing for us as kids, but people are malleable. And so I hope that people continue to look at Jewish people like that too. Like that, not even if you're against Zionism, even if you don't believe that Israel's in the right and all these different things, just imagine that there are more Jewish people living overseas than there are in Israel. And maybe divorce the two things in your mind. Treat people like individuals. So that's my message. Okay.
That's it. I love it.
All right, Dig, let's take a wild turn now.
You want to do a
This
180
topic is such a swing.
Yep. This was all part of the plan. Let's go to you with your topic now, number 2. And I wanted to get to you obviously sooner too, so you had time to flesh out your stuff because you're probably going to go. We might finish without you. So
yeah.
So go on and give us your best shot.
Yeah, let's do this 180. Let's do this. I just picture like a drifting. You ever see a car drifting around a corner,
Yeah.
like just total fishtailing out? Like this is exactly what this is. I wanted to talk to you guys about laughing fits, which is just occurred to me or reoccurred to me the other day. This is like my favorite thing in life is like just having an uncontrollable fit of laughter. And when I hand the baton to you guys, take it in any myriad of ways you would like to take it. But I'll tell you what made me think of it. I was two days ago, I was sitting here animating at work and I was listening to Red Letter Media, as I often do. And I believe it was an episode of Best of the Worst, which for you nerds that are living under a rock, that's Red Letter Media's show where they take usually old videos, usually VHS, but it could be DVD. And it's like really obscure shit like training videos, procedurals. It could be like corporate videos, that type of thing. And they basically just have to endure watching them. They take them off of the giant Jenga stack and then they have to watch through these usually low budget, usually pretty
They're so
shittily
funny,
done.
man. They're so great. Those guys are so fucking good.
And they riff.
They're legendary.
And
yeah.
They just riff. The 3 or 4 of them riff. And usually I usually get into some sort of hysterics listening to this show in particular. And I'm not even sure. This one just popped into my feed on YouTube after something else. So I'm not even sure if it was an older episode or a newer one. But somebody made a joke just riffing on one of these videos and Rich started laughing. And I just got into it. It was early in the morning. I was up at like 7 o'clock. I had only gotten like 4 hours of sleep the night before. So there was some sort of dimension of just being a little punch drunk, I think, too. And it just tickled my funny bone. And I was laughing so hard that I had to put down my stylus and be like, I can't even deal with it. I was listening to it over and over again. It was just like one of those little jewels, one of those little moments that just triggered a laughing fit. Like I couldn't breathe. And I was just thinking, I love those moments because they're always unexpected. You can't make that happen. There's no artificially creating that. It's just one of those random sort of treats that are just handed to you unexpectedly. And you know what I was thinking of, Kyle? I was thinking of 2 times in my life where that happened to me. And I don't know if you remember this, but early on, Kyle, in Knockback, when we were still traveling to each other's homes on the coasts, where I think I was in LA and we were recording Knockback together. This might have been 2018. Maybe it was 2019. And we were doing a show. And it was one of those rare times we got into a laughing fit. And I think we were workshopping intro sequences, like intro segments to the show. And we were doing Mad Libs. And we just hit on a Mad Lib that was just like one of those things that we just could not stop laughing. And it was one of my favorite moments in podcasting because you can't,
I remember that.
Again, you can't make those things happen. It just happens. It's just the perfect.
We also had that when I was
culmination.
drawing things and showing them to you. Like you would ask me to draw something at the end of each show.
Dude, that was amazing.
And I drew Jesus on the cross, I think. And that was the one that
I still have those drawings.
Yeah.
I still have some of them. And then we would mail them out to people that won them, right?
Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
Like a stick figure, like did the best I could. Dude, I don't know why I can't draw. Like it gets worse actually as time goes on. But anyway, go on.
Well, it's like me playing music. It's the same thing, It's like why even bother type of thing. But I had remembered a time in high school when this happened to me, and it was a funny story. I don't know if I ever told this story on the podcast. Like me and my best friend growing up, my friend John, we were friends all through school, from kindergarten through our senior year in high school. Best friends. We met when we were 4 years old in our driveway of our new house in a fist fight. over some kind of ride-on fire truck toy. Gave each other bloody noses. I believe he gave me a bloody nose and a black eye. And from that moment on, from that day on, we were best friends. Never an argument, never another fight, but we met like in fisticuffs as 4-year-olds, which is really kind of a funny memory. And I do remember it. I do remember having a bloody nose and being upset. And it was the first time I hurt somebody else. And from that time on, we were just inseparable. And I have to get some confirmation from our mom on this, but me and John went to the same schools. We're never, ever in the same class, ever. Like it might have been a thing where they were just like, these two can't be together. It's too much of a distraction. They're going to get up to too much mischief. Like it was going to be to the point where like by the time we were in like 6th or 7th grade, it was like, seriously, like we're just not going to be in the same class. Like it was sometimes like a 1 in 3 shot and we would just never be in the same class. And then it got weird in junior high school and high school because we weren't in the same electives, like same gym class, same art class, never in the same things. Like we never crossed paths to the fact where it was like, is this intentional? Like what is happening? Finally in 10th grade, we had a small, like half a year random elective art class together. And we knew in the summertime, as we were comparing schedules, we were like, it might've been 11th grade, actually. We had 2 years left of high school. And we're like, holy shit, we're going to be in the same class for the first time. And it was actually bad to keep us apart for so long, I think, in a lot of ways, because we were just gunning for this now. And I think it so happened that we were in the same English class the second half of that year, too. So early on, that art, it's September, we're in that same art class together. And I remember thinking, like, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe this is actually happening. And somewhere in the latter half of that first week, we were doing something like decidedly unhysterical, like drawing a still life or something. And we got into an insane laughing fit. I don't even know what triggered it. I don't know what the catalyst was, but we were just belly laughing to the point where the art teacher was getting pissed because he was like, like it was disruptive. And we both ended up getting kicked out of class. And it was on this crazy, like, yeah, I think that we were building this head of steam over like 11 years. Like it was going to end. This was going to happen. You know what I mean? You held us apart for so long. Now we're in the classroom environment together. There was almost some kind of energy of not even knowing how to handle it, like being in the class together, because all we really knew of each other was outside school. It was totally casual in each other's houses, pools, playing weekends, whatever, but never in the school environment. So it was funny to us, And that same year, that second half of the year, we had an English teacher who was also my theater teacher. I had learned that year or the year prior that I was supposed to, as an animator, as an aspiring animator, I was supposed to take acting classes. So all of a sudden I entered into the theater kids group and they were just like, who the fuck is it? Like these kids were together since junior high school. It was like all the thespians and stuff. And all of a sudden here comes this rando. And this guy, I was already on this guy's radar because I think he thought it was kind of suspicious, this English teacher. And it was the same thing, second half of the year, maybe after Christmas sometime, me and John were in this English class together, which was even more intense than like an art class because it's not laid back. It's a more serious, quote unquote, academic course or whatever. And it was the same thing. We got into this laughing fit. Again, I don't even know what triggered it, just being silly. And the English teacher got so upset with me. You know what this guy looked like? This might be a deep cut, but do you guys know the Disney animated Hercules film?
Oh, dude, that's like Jimmy and I's like probably a core film for us.
You're kidding me.
Yeah, because it would have been Hercules. What year
was 98, right?
98, yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I watched Hercules like at some point in my life daily.
I still watch Hercules. My wife like is the biggest fan. They did like a 25th anniversary or whatever anniversary it is, like collection of items at Disneyland. And we were there like 6 months ago. And I swear to God, we went like 3 times that month because we had passes. And every time it was like fully stocked. But she bought everything, like a mug,
That's so
a blanket, like she bought a plate set. She doesn't use any of it. It's like a car crash memorial of Hercules shit that she has. But like, she loves Hercules.
That's awesome, because I feel like that movie is underappreciated, but that
so
is
good.
a generational wheelhouse for you guys, I feel like.
Yeah.
But this guy looked exactly like the Danny DeVito character, the little Phil. He was like a little centaur.
He's in
Right,
Kingdom
he was
Hearts
like a
too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And he jumped. He was like a little guy. He was like a little man. His name was Mr. Man, actually. And he jumped up on one of the tables. It was a weird class because it wasn't individual desks. There were just tables, almost like an art room. And he just little guy, he was like 4'8" if he was an inch, jumped up on the table, just like really agilely, just jumped up onto the table and said, and yelled at me from across the room. And he said, "Hey, you with the mouth, get out of my classroom." And it just made it worse. Like, I was belly laughing all the way down to the principal's office. And I wasn't a kid that got up to no good generally. It was just one of those things. Like, me and John were finally together and we were just enjoying it. You know, we were just kind of relishing every moment of it. But that was one of the things where I couldn't even, I think even the principal was like, all right, like, I kind of get it. Like, Dagan and John, it's just dynamic. They're finally buddies. They're together in the same class. But I'll never forget that. And I'll never forget, like, just that and you know what? It's also the type of thing where things are crazy right now in the world. Things are a little rough with the job, you know, like stresses with working a lot of hours and stuff. It's like, you need that levity. And it just, when it happens, it's so refreshing because, again, you can't make it happen. You can't artificially create those moments. It just happens. But although Red Letter Media seems like a good trigger for me for it. So, Jimmy, you're our guest. I'm going to go to you on this. Belly laughing fit moments. What makes you laugh? Who makes you laugh? Take it away, my friend.
I got a couple short ones. One came to me while you were talking that was one of the funniest moments of my entire life. So, like 2018, there was like peak for my YouTube channel because that's when Halloween was coming back and I was going to do anything I could to see Halloween 2018 early. So I saw there was a random theater in Salem, Massachusetts, and this is when I was living in LA. They had like a very early screening, like the second screening of this movie for sure. So I saw the tickets for $10. I bought 2 of them and I called my best friend and I'm like, yo, his name's George. Like, we're going to go to this.
Shout out George.
Yeah, he came to the live show with me. So
yeah.
he was
the
around.
Really strikingly handsome tall man, if anyone's wondering if that was there. He was the most
cool.
tall and most handsome.
I can vouch for him since we've been best friends since 6th grade. And then like a drop of a hat, he was like, yep, I got the vacation. We go to Salem. But we also had a film festival in Colorado that week. And we were like, well, I guess we're going to do that. It was in Telluride. And this is like an extended story of like multiple times he made me belly laugh. So we see a movie totally delirious because of the flight situation. And it's called Terrified. People say it's like one of the scariest movies ever. It's creepy. I wouldn't call it that. But there's a very striking image of like the ghost of a naked old Argentinian man in it. And for some reason that like fucked George up. Like, he was terrified of it. So we like went out, we got drunk. We're still delirious from the flight. And our bedroom in this Airbnb that I had rented was like in the basement, and it was 2 twin beds next to each other because a bunch of my like movie friends came to this trip. And these people left a bunch of food when they left too, and like medications and everything. So they cleared out for this Airbnb that we rented. I was like, this is really weird. So I'm telling George, because there's this creepy little window up in the top of the room, and it's very oddly placed. Like, it's like a 12 by 12 window in the top left corner of a room, aligned with the wall and the ceiling. And that is the only window in this room. And I'm like, wouldn't it be crazy if you like woke up in the middle of the night and that old dude was just looking in here? And he was like, stop. He's like, don't say that. So then I know his other fear, I was like torturing him. This is really bad. Makes me look really bad, but I don't care. I know his other fear is like crazy 911 calls. So I was like, let's listen to 911 calls. And I put those on. And then our friend Graham is like in the other room. He's talking to his wife. And in the morning, I come upstairs. He's like, what the fuck were you guys listening to last night? Like, women being murdered? And that made me just drop everything and crack up. And then I walk over to the fridge. And when we had gotten there, we opened the fridge. And there was this comically large block of cheddar cheese in the fridge that was still wrapped in plastic. It was a foot by like 6 inches tall. And there is like a cartoon style bite through the plastic, just like straight down out of the cheese. And I lost it. And then all my friends, it was like 6 guys were there. They all came up. I'm like just pointing at the fridge because I can't talk. And they all just like open the fridge and everyone's just like cracking up. And then we just left it there. The Airbnb lady, after we left, she messages me on the app. All caps, what did you do to my cheese? And so that's like a classic moment. And then my other one is one time before our move to Michigan was kind of stressful because we planned to do it after our wedding in October, but my wife got offered a job, so we had to drop everything and do it in June. And our house was like a quarter done being renovated at that point, so it was very stressful. We were fighting about like a moving expense or something dumb. And then my little Shih Tzu, who's got massive health problems, she's behind us eating her dinner, her kibble, and we hear her give the most like human cough, like, and then you hear the kibble just like go on the floor, and that ended the flight, and we laughed for like an hour. And then it like totally fixed every problem we had with the move too. Like from that point forward, we were like, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. Go team. We're not against each other in this. We're together. And it like, so my little Shih Tzu Coco that we adopted at age 10 fixed everything.
Oh,
and
wow.
Those are just 2 that I thought of with friends. I love that yours are from high school because I like high school for me, total just unremarkable period of my life. And then like most of college, but then senior year when I met my wife, everything just like picked up for me. My 20s were amazing. So all of my best like laughing stories are from my 20s for sure.
Dang,
Those are good ones. Those are good. That reminds me too. I love both of those stories because you really put me there. I have a friend. I have to distinguish friend Colin from brother Colin, but I have a friend Colin who made Helene and I collectively belly laugh. This was probably like a few months ago. He came over, and he's like a highly educated dude. Like I met him in art school, but he had already graduated from Cornell before he even went to art school. But his parents are both doctors. His oldest brother is like a chief surgeon at Johns Hopkins. He comes from like a very, very unassuming, but very intelligent, very like wealthy family. And Colin's like the black sheep because he's like an animator, you know? And he was telling a story about how he's always kind of had that role of the middle of the 3 brothers and how he was always the least promising and everything. And he was in private school once getting kind of reamed out by the headmaster. And basically while the guy was yelling at him, escaped out the 2nd story window, like just jumped
like
out
Ted
the window
Bundy.
while he was being, I was just like, what? And he was telling the story like we were expecting it to go that way. You know, and it was just like one of those things where like, what did you just say? It's like, yeah, I opened the window, just jumped out and ran away.
That's awesome.
While I was being like chastised and whatever. I was like, oh my God. But yeah, so it's always something. I think for me lately too, like I'm definitely noticing I've had like 2 weeks. I don't know if you guys can relate to this. I've had like 2 weeks straight. I'm working on commercials right now and they're very demanding. So I'm not getting much sleep. And that definitely adds to it in a strange way that I can't really put into words. But there's something about I just have a better sense of humor, or I'm easier to make laugh when I'm sleep deprived. I don't know what it, again, that punch
100%.
drunk, right? That whole thing of like just, I don't know. I don't know what it is. I can't describe it, but I'm exhausted, but I kind of like that part of it at least. Where it's like, I just find things funny that I wouldn't normally. So Dust, what do you got for me on this one?
Man, guys, I'm going to take you to the lowest level of my humor here, because I realized that the 2 times in my recent memory that I can really remember belly laughing involving someone either almost or actually shitting their pants. So this is where we're going with this. But it's true.
That's awesome.
And I'm not naming any names. I don't implicate any potential pants shitters, but this one, it's not as funny to tell, but it was probably the most I ever laughed in my life, where I almost threw up. I was laughing so hard. We were in an Uber, me and the boys, on one of our trips, and my friend was stuck in the middle of the 2 bigger guys in the back. And before we get in the Uber, he's like, "Man, I really got to take a shit. Like, I hope It'll be all right. But we got to get back. We were all under the influence of, either alcohol or edibles, something. I don't know. So we were all having a very good time as it is. I just remember, like, I might have been in the front or beside him, but I remember, like, looking over. He looked like the meme from Oppenheimer where he's like, he's like putting his hand on his forehead a little bit. I remember getting out of the Uber and the image of him, he didn't straight run, because I think if he was worried that if he did a full sprint, he would let loose. So it was like this awkward walk, like a very quick walk. And I remember thinking it was so funny that he was like in this Uber, like, oh my God, I'm going to shit my pants. Please, God, no, don't let that happen. And then he's like walking as quick as possible. And we were walking back to our apartment or Airbnb, whatever. And we were in the hotel hall, like the hallways. And I was like choking. I was laughing because I could see him down the hall, like going as fast as possible. And then, so he was in the bathroom for quite a bit. He made it.
Good.
He made it. But what was funny is we heard, I think someone else had to like either pee or something. Like it was an emergency. We were waiting for him to be done. So we hear the toilet flush and it's like, oh, he's done. Immediately the shower turned on. And we were like, oh no, maybe he didn't make it. And we were like, dude, what happened? He was like, sometimes some certain messes can't be cleaned.
Yeah, you just gotta get in the shower. Totally.
You just gotta get in the shower.
Oh yeah, that's totally I love taking a shower after a good poop,
Yeah.
Yeah. Love.
So that was probably the hardest I ever laughed in my life, was that instance. But like I said, there is one that actually does involve someone shitting their pants too, where I want to make sure I don't implicate anybody. This was at one of our trips with the boys, and through these trips, we would sometimes have various people join us that worked on the site with us. We didn't always know them as well. We met up with this person. He's like, I got to go to the bathroom. I got to clean up a little bit. So, did you ever have a fart you haven't really, shouldn't have trusted, but did? And we're like, yeah. So he's in there for a long time. Like, okay, this is like right when we met this person. We had worked with him, right? He comes out and he's in gym shorts now, but his pants are all wet.
Oh no!
So he did indeed have an issue, which is funny, but not. It kind of felt more bad than anything. So later in the night, this is after we had like went to dinner, and I don't know how we realized at the moment, but we realized these pants, the wet pants, were being draped on the corner of our dining table where we would all eat.
Shitty pants.
And one of our guys was like, hey, are those the shit pants? Yeah. Well, no, but yeah. That was the response. Like, he tried to deny it initially. But the really funny thing that made me laugh really, really hard was I think the next day, maybe we had gotten pizza or something, because there was leftover pizza in the fridge. And I will name Ben here. It wasn't Ben. Okay, so it's not, Ben was not the pants shitter I'm referring to. But we were trying to get out the door. We were trying to go to the convention. We didn't want to be late. We didn't want to get stuck in traffic. So Ben quickly grabbed a piece of pizza and then realized he needed something from the room. So he put it down on the table. And then I was standing there waiting for him. He comes back and he grabs the pizza. And then we look at each other because we realize we have this telepathic communication like, oh no, he put it right on the corner where the shit pants were. And then I think this may not be what happened. This is how I remember. I remember Ben tossing the pizza across the room directly into the trash. It was like, let's go. And then, so yeah, that was it. It was just that we were both dying. So like, oh no, that was the spot. So yeah, like I said, one of the funniest things to me ever are any stories of someone shitting their pants, I guess. So, because both of those, I think back very, very, very fondly now on.
Yeah,
on
that can't
memories.
Be a coincidence.
No, it can't be.
And pooping pants is, come on, let's face it.
Dude, Colin, I love your story that you've told many times about your pants shitting experience. I don't know if it's wounds to go over again, but I've heard you tell the story so many times now.
Yeah. It's got, I don't know why it comes up. Yeah, because I will say that like I've let farts. I've become very cavalier about farts in my working from home or, where
Sure.
I've definitely been like, whoops, and had to like jump in the shower on more than one occasion, like things you wouldn't let go in the normal course of your life if you were out and about, but you're like, yeah, I'm flying a little close to the sun here, but I'm going to see what happens. And, and it goes bad, but I did straight shit my pants. Yes. One time. And that was just the one where in San Francisco with my ex-girlfriend, and this was during IGN or maybe early Kind of Funny. I don't know, because we told the story on the show like immediately, so it would be timestamped from that point. But
wasn't it that you like went to a convenience store like, I need to use your bathroom? Like, we don't have one. You're like, I'll pay you.
Yeah, I was like, I'll give you $20.
I'll give you $20. The desperation.
Like, because we were eating at, I wish I remember the place. There was this great pizza place in San Francisco out by the water on Judah, probably, or Irving, probably at like 40th or something. And they had like beers, and we would eat and drink there. So it was me, Greg, and my ex. And we were just at this bar eating, drinking, and then we would walk back. We would walk everywhere. I mean, San Francisco is a very walkable city. And the city blocks there are not like New York City blocks, like 40 blocks. We were 25 blocks from our house at this place, but that is not real 25 blocks. It's probably more like 5 New York blocks or something like that. But on the way home, I just was like, I have to shit really bad. And what I remember is my girlfriend at the time being like, and I remember she was right, like her instincts were right, but I was still mad at her for it because I was like, you cost me 10 seconds. She was like, just go into the convenience store up here, which is one we'd never been in before, and just asked to use their bathroom. And I ran in there and I'm like, can I please use your bathroom? And the dude's like, no, like just straight up. And I'm like, I was like, I'll pay you. And you just wouldn't do it. So I lost like 15 seconds and then ran back out and was really full on running home, like running. And I got onto my street. So I was running up, I guess, Irving, and I got to 25th, and I started running towards our building, and then it just moments before I got to my door, I was like, that's it. It was the only time in my life where I'm like, you cannot hold this. Like, it's over. And I just straight up shit my pants while I was opening the gate outside my door.
I almost pissed my pants at a concert this summer, and I've never been in a situation where I like had to pee that bad, like, or anywhere close to it. But it was at an outdoor concert. It was for Fall Out Boy, and it was like halfway through, and I was like, I can definitely make it till the end, not realizing there was only one staircase out of this place because it was an outdoor concert. We were at the top of the hill, and I ended up like jumping over the like railing, and I ran all the way down the hill and jumped back in, and like people were like pushing me down the last 5 stairs because they were so pissed. And I was like, I'm gonna pee my pants. Do you want me to like brush up on you with my pee pants in my head? So then I like run, and then somehow the guys' bathroom had a line, but the girls' one didn't. And I was like, you know what? Judge me all you want. I think I get judged more pissing my pants than if I just go in the girls' bathroom. So I ran in there and I went and I got out, and then I had to like face the shame of everyone who I cut coming down the stairs because I left my group at the top. And it was
I salute your courage.
Dude, that's a scary thing. Like pee. It's so interesting how there's different kinds of pees. I've been thinking about this too. Like the pee where you have to go, but you can hold it for seemingly hours. And then the pee where it's like you got to go, and the more you wait, the worse it gets. And
I misjudged. Yep. It was that kind of pee. I've done that in a movie before, like The Last Mission Impossible. I had a very similar brush with fate, but yeah, I totally misjudged it. I don't know what the deal is because I used to have such a good sense for bathroom problems, like what's brewing in there, but not
I
anymore.
don't think there's a worse feeling than having to really, really have to pee, and you can't. Like, let's say you're on a car trip and you're just not in a place where you could stop. I don't think there's a worse feeling in the world than that.
Poop.
Like
having to poop in that situation is worse.
Maybe.
So like you could at some point. There's ways, to pee in a bottle or just on the side of the road. Worst comes to worst. Like I've definitely peed in places I shouldn't have peed before because I couldn't hold it. That's definitely true. Yep.
Yeah.
And then you get that thing where it's like if you get caught, you'll they'll put you on the fucking registry or whatever. It's like, really? Jesus Christ. But I have to pee.
Really?
Yeah. You never heard that like that. I don't know if that's a wives' tale or something like that. Where
it's not.
Like where
it's
if you're caught peeing in public, like, or not in public, peeing in the middle of the street, but like in an alleyway.
No, I didn't know about this.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
So it's like,
I know
so
it's true because it happened to one of my friends.
that's
in
so
college.
fucking,
Damn.
that's fucking crazy.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Like that's
like I got
totally
second
crazy.
party info here. Like,
Yeah.
Or I guess it'd be first party, but like, yeah, not good.
Yeah. I mean, you
Holy
shouldn't be
shit.
doing that generally speaking, but if someone's peeing behind a dumpster or something in an alleyway, it's like, all right, man, it's 2 a.m. Let's just mind your business. You know,
Yeah, it's a bar thing.
why is
Yeah,
your,
it's
why,
not
never mind. Not even gonna say.
You know what's funny? This kind of dovetails with the topic a little bit. Do you guys know anybody like that? Like my sister-in-law, Helene's youngest sister, when you really make her laugh, you got to be careful because her go-to physical reaction is she's going to pee her pants. And she's not saying it like in a way of like, you know, that old cliche.
Yeah.
She's going to pee her pants. I never saw her actually pee her pants, but apparently she gets super worried about it. Like it goes from being in hysterics to being like, no, seriously, stop. I'm going to wet myself. Do you guys know anybody like that where they just can't control it?
Got to get her some Depends.
I
Like,
don't,
oh.
but yeah, I was watching my wife and I have YouTube TV because she watches all the Bachelor shows, and they'll play the same ads. It's not like cable where you get like, you know, some variety. They'll just play the same ad three times in a row.
Yeah.
And we were just in bed watching. She was watching The Bachelor, and it's like the same ad 3 times about those pads you can put in if you have that problem. And she's like, she just looks at me. She's like, I feel fucking targeted, and I want you to know that I don't have this problem.
That's all.
It's like, now I think you do because you brought it up. I wasn't even thinking it.
I was
Kelsey.
pulling-
She's like,
It's so funny you say this because I've been pulling like more. I'm becoming more and more dad-like, and as I get older, I just really don't care, and I like being kind of goofy. And when we go to BJ's Price Club or whatever, and they have like the huge Depends things. Last time I was in there, I was with Micah, and I'm like, so like there was a woman near us, and I was like loud, like, so do you want to buy your Depends here, or do you feel like you have enough at home or whatever kind of thing?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I love that.
Which is totally like blatantly like the woman would not mistake me as being serious. It's me being facetious, but nonetheless. Dig, I guess I have a couple answers for you, and then we can move on to the next topic.
Please. Of course.
The one I that came to mind for me when you brought this up immediately was just the show Portlandia. The day I discovered that show was a bad day for me to discover that show because I guess it was in late 2011. People might remember, and it's come up in the past, I had skin cancer, but like not like the horrible kind, but just skin cancer nonetheless. And it got cut, you know, it was on my nose and I had to get it like cut off. So I had surgery to get it cut off, but they had to, well, they didn't have to, but they kept the wound open, like, and just bandaged it over to do like, you know, do their analysis and make sure they got it all. And then they would stitch it up because they didn't want to stitch it up and find more and then have to open it up and stitch it up again. So I had like this open wound, and I it was like just bandaged over on my nose, but I had to keep it like really tightly wound or whatever. It was going to be like really bad for it. And Greg Miller and I were living together at the time watching Portlandia, and I remember the first episode so well and all the different skits in it because in the first few episodes because I literally was like, I have to leave this. I can't actually watch this right now because I was laughing so hard that the scar was like opening and it's in a really bad place and it was hurting me so bad. And I just always tied that into Portlandia and a time when I was going to be almost laughing till I cried, basically, which is a thing I wrote in my notes too about just laughing till you cry. I love that feeling. It's very it's inexplicable. It comes.
it's a high.
Yeah.
You want to chase.
Yeah, it is. It's awesome. Yeah, it's euphoric.
It.
And Micah and I are very, very, very goofy. Like it's very rarely serious between us, always making wisecracks and jokes between each other and very sarcastic or whatever. And so we have moments often where I'm like, this is like an hysterical moment. And those are kind of, like the inexplicable things. The thing I thought of too, though, and Ramon and I were just talking about this actually when he was here, who's my best friend. He does all the music for Last Stand Media. And we went to college together. And our friend Kevin got married here in Virginia in 2012. And so we rented a hotel with him and his ex-girlfriend. And we went to this hotel. And I think I told the story about how it was like infested with like insects and like you could just tell, and it was gross. And so we were out of here. So we couldn't get a hotel in the area except for this like nicer hotel, but it was a smoking room and it smelled like shit. And we were in this room, but I guess there was some sort of air conditioner that used to be on the wall. And there was one of those plugs that was really high up to facilitate plugging something in that would be up there, maybe like a TV in the corner or something like that. And we thought it was we were like really tired because we were jumping around between hotels trying to find a place to stay or whatever. And we just thought it was hysterical to hang our phones from this plug, like to charge them like a little guillotine sort of thing. So we, instead of plugging them in normal places, there were these plugs, and we would just plug our stuff in around the room in these little plugs. And that was hysterical too. I feel like I love those little moments because you can't really plan them. You can't write those moments. You can write funny moments and jokes that are funny, but yeah, it's capturing a moment in time that's actually really special, and the feeling of it.
Yeah.
Which I think is really good. So it's a nice topic.
There's no telling.
Yeah.
There's no telling. Yeah.
Are you satisfied, Dave?
Yeah, that was awesome.
Right.
I mean, that was, I'm just waiting for the next one. You know, I'm always just waiting for the next one. It makes me feel good. You know what show did that to me? You talk about Portlandia. When I finally sat down and started to watch Trailer Park Boys.
Oh yeah,
that show would.
Oh yeah, didn't we watch that? Didn't we watch that together in the beginning? I reckon
we watched a bit of it together.
Yeah, I think wasn't it that it was something like I learned about it from my ex, and then I told you about it, and I was like, you really should, because it was a thing. It was one of those shows that I saw for years where I'm like, I'm not watching this show. And I knew you felt the same way about it, I was like, no, you really ought to watch this show.
So worth it.
And that first episode is hysterical.
Oh, dude, it's
Iris or whatever with the
Cyrus, dude.
Cyrus
with the gun.
Yeah, safety always off. You know.
All right,
good shit, guys.
Let's see here. Let's go, Jimmy. Let's go to your topic. I think, and then we'll go to Dagan first, I guess, in the rotisserie, so that we can accommodate you exiting day, because I know you have to be mindful. You have to go because this. I assume I'm connecting these things because of your daughter having this feast at your house tonight.
No, well, that's definitely looming, but I have to help Helene break down out in the sticks. You know, her whole tent, her whole art and craft display.
Oh, gotcha.
So we could get back, because then we have about 2 hours to help.
Oh, okay, cool. All right.
Get ready.
Godspeed.
So, yeah.
All right, Jimmy, I leave it to you.
All right. So my topic, I asked Dustin, I said, can I do horror movies or this topic? And he said, I just did horror movies for Halloween. And I was like, damn. So I went with my number 2 here, which is very important to me. It's handheld gaming. And it's something that has become increasingly important over time to me, because I realized that like every era of my life has been tied to some sort of handheld. Like, so I just figured I'd give like the brief history here and then let's talk about why I like it. So I had the Game Boy, the original. I was at my grandpa's house when I was probably like 5, and I opened up the cabinet under his TV, and it was, I'm so mad that I even opened this now in hindsight, but it was wrapped in plastic, unused. My like older cousins had bought it for him for Christmas or whatever, and he's like, he was old. He was an older grandpa, like when I was a kid. He died when I was young. He was awesome. He had like a totally brand new Game Boy original with the link cable, with Tetris. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And he was like, oh, you want that? You just take it. And so I ripped it open, totally destroyed the box. And I thought the goal of, I was young enough where I thought the goal of Tetris was to build a cool tower. And then like eventually he was like, no, this is how you play it. So I'll never forget that. And then later on, got the Game Boy Advance SP for Christmas the year it came out with Pokemon Sapphire, and my brother got one with Ruby, and that was like my brother and I butt heads a lot, and that was one of our only times growing up where we actually like did something together, and it was fun and exciting for both of us. And then I got the DS the year it came out for my birthday, and I remember driving down to Florida with my dad to clean out my grandma's condo for her. And it was like the 3rd day. This is in March. It was like the 3rd day after this thing came out, and it stopped working. And I'll never forget that my dad, who like never is the guy who calls customer service or anything, he called Nintendo, and they had a new one at the condo waiting for us the next day, which I thought was, I was like, how did my dad do that? That is so cool. I was like more excited about my dad doing that than Nintendo having 1-day shipping. I was like, man, he's so cool. And then got the PSP, a little after it came out, from my other grandpa on my dad's side. And that's probably one of my most used handhelds. Just, it was how I experienced a lot of horror movies, because I found out that at Target, they would discount the UMD version of movies. And if it was R-rated, they wouldn't ID you for UMDs.
Oh.
So I saw crazy shit on UMD, like the original Saw, just wild horror. Think like the remake of I Spit on Your Grave, like stuff that was way out of the realm of what I should be watching. That's so funny.
You found a loophole.
Like, it was awesome. And yeah, it was a horrible screen, and it wasn't like the optimal way to watch those movies, but it almost felt cool. Like when kids talk about like sneaking playing games under their blanket, like I was watching like crazy horror movies like Hostel and stuff. So that I'll never forget that. And then that was my companion game console for like driving to Florida with my family, because that was like where I really started to branch out and play games like Killzone Liberation, and then eventually my favorite Metal Gear, which is Peace Walker, and just tons of different. That console had like tons of ingenuity, and it was kind of forced because it only had the one little nub. So they had to get crafty. Like I'll never forget Coded Arms when I played that, and I was using the face buttons to turn the camera. I was like, this is wild. And then I got the 3DS with graduation money, which was cool because it's the first console I bought with my own money, like handheld wise. And then I traded it in with a bunch of games and got a PS Vita. And that's where my like video game career started. I had a website and I just wrote about Vita stuff. And that was like the first time anyone read anything I talked about. I was like die-hard Vita guy. I had probably almost every game for it. I still have both the original Vita and then the revision one. And I still bust it out time to time because I really like playing Castlevania Symphony of the Night on it. And then got a Nintendo Switch. It came out on my birthday in 2017. 3/3/2017, which was very cool for me. Then the console that changed it all for me, the handheld, the Steam Deck, that is my most played thing by far. Just like, it is the perfect thing for what I want out of a handheld. I can play my Steam games. I can emulate games on it. It has a decent enough battery where I can take it anywhere, and I have taken it all over the place. And I started a YouTube channel about it that I found like modest success on, which I love, just that worked out because it was a real hobby for me, learning all the ins and outs of Linux and everything. And then Dustin and I have been talking a lot lately that we just both bought Analog Pockets. And the first thing I did on that was 100% playthrough of Super Mario World, which was very cool. So nice. Yeah, I've had every handheld. That's my history. I just think it's the most intimate way to play games. You can play with headphones. You can play without sound and still get a good experience. It's great for when my wife Kelsey's watching The Bachelor. I can play Diablo 4 on the couch. It's amazing. And I just think it's a separate experience from what you get out of a console or a PC, like a TV console, I mean. And I think they're just so cool. So whoever wants to.
Yeah, Dave, I'll let you take it just to be mindful of your time. So
thank you for that. I love this topic. I mean, I have to start by saying the first thing I thought of when Jimmy sent the topic was, I play a lot of Nintendo these days. Lots of Switch. We do the Punching Up podcast. I haven't played the Switch docked for 3 years, which makes me realize for Super Switch, which it better be called, Switch 2.
That would be awesome if it was called that. Is that a realistic possibility that it would be called that? Because that would be sick.
We're gunning for it on Punching Up. I think we're all four of us, right, Dust? We're of the same mind.
That would be sick.
It's got to be Super
if they called
Switch.
It that.
Be awesome.
But yeah, that was the first thing I thought of. The second thing I thought of, when you talk about the Game Boy, Jimmy, I had really inauspicious, not so hot beginnings with handheld gaming because I never owned a Game Boy, but Colin had one. Little Kyle had a Game Boy. And I always found it the most fucking frustrating thing as whatever, I was in my late teens at that point, probably. And, I call it the spinach Game Boy, but, it was so cool. Like the concept of a little 8-bit light, whatever you want to call it, handheld, but I just couldn't, the monotone spinach green thing didn't bother me. The lack of backlight. I was like, I cannot. I remember being in Colin's, my mom's then a New Hampshire apartment, like trying to like maneuver just right into the light. Like I was an old man. I just couldn't see it. I mean, I remember being like, I cannot get into this handheld gaming thing. But that led me to when I met Helene, when I met my wife, she was dating somebody else. So I was friends with Helene's two roommates, and Helene was the mysterious third roommate that I never saw around because we were either in art school or she was at the beach all summer. So I just never saw her. around. She was like the mysterious third roommate of 1236 Pine Street. When I finally met her and we got to be friends, she was dating a friend of a good friend of mine. My friend Christian's friend, Frank, was dating Helene. Frank was an annoying dude. I have to just say, he's a total hipster, owned like a little shop, like a boutique on South Street in Philly, wore a cowboy hat all the time. Like, unironically, he was just annoying. And this is when I knew Helene was a baller, right? When she broke up with Frank, like months into knowing her, and we would hang out, she had Frank's Game Gear. I think the statute of limitations is passed on this now. Frank could listen to this story. She was like, you could just have it. So I had a free Game Gear and I think a couple of games, Columns and Sonic or something. And I was like, no, this is the shit. Even though the battery, I know the notorious, infamous battery life of the Game Gear. That's really where my handheld gaming started, because I got this free Game Gear from my new girlfriend.
Did you get the RF plug for it or anything like that?
The whole thing, the whole kit. I think I had the box and everything.
Yeah.
Still have it.
Sick.
Yeah. So she was just like, you could have it. And I was like, we're not giving it back to Frank. The funny thing was, we used to shop at his store sometimes. He had like cool oddities, like tchotchkes. I remember she got me like a Dragon Quest pencil case from him. Like, so we would see him knowing full well, like, we have your Game Gear type thing, which I always thought was the coolest thing.
He didn't. He just forgot about it.
Yeah, he probably didn't even give a shit.
Yeah,
he didn't care. He didn't
whatever.
care. No. He was too busy rocking his hipster cowboy hats. But Jimmy, I brought props because I'm going to talk to you guys about
this is awesome.
The greatest handheld of all time. There it is.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's the best. It's so good.
Patriotic.
It is. It's
How do you keep it unscratched like that?
Yeah.
Like,
Let's see if it goes on.
It's so memorable.
No battery? Oh, damn. No battery. Let's see if Graydon's. No, that sucks. I wanted to hear the little telltale thing. This is the best.
Dagan, which screen is on those?
What do you mean?
So there's the one that has a front light on it, which is the 001 model.
Look at the
and then there's the 101 model. This is very important in the collector space because the 101 is the primo top tier Game Boy Advance screen.
Oh, I have whatever one I had was the one that came like day one, whatever that one was available.
Okay, so that was the inferior one.
Okay, yeah, I assume so.
Yeah. Oh, I think I have both inferior, yeah, because these are identical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude,
I didn't even know. I didn't even realize that. You know what's funny about this topic, though? I know Dustin knows this because we talk about it on Punching Up sometimes. Jimmy wouldn't know this, but I collect for a variety of retro consoles. So both domestic and Japanese. So Genesis, Mega Drive, Famicom, NES, Super Famicom, Super Nintendo. So, and TurboGrafx, PC Engine. So I have I'm all divested in a million different directions, plus Game Boy Advance. So, and Game Boy in general. But I'm seriously considering paring down my collection to probably just NES, Famicom, and I think Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. So
you got to keep Advance right now. Well,
yeah,
if you cashed out right now, you'd be like making good money, because I got this Analog Pocket. I'm trying to buy like obscure crap from when I was a kid, like the Beyblade game, and even those are like just ridiculously.
I keep hearing that, like the Game Boy Advance especially is hot right now, which I didn't realize.
Yeah,
I want to keep it because I play it. I think, you know what's funny about all the retro consoles? The Game Boy Advance SP is probably the one I play the most still. So it's worth keeping just in terms of like hands-on, type of thing. With NES, I can't part with those. They're too nostalgic, I feel like. And Famicom, I'm way too proud of my collection. I have like almost every higher end game for Famicom cool. Now. I put a lot of work into that. But everything else I feel like I could part with. But Game Boy is just something I literally enjoy playing. Especially the Advance SP. I just think it's just brilliant. I missed the entire DS era until my kids sort of played into this a little bit, until 3DS and 2DS. And the 2DS XL is probably my second to the Advance SP. But I missed entire like DS, DSi. Like I didn't have any of those. I think I have yours, Kyle, put away.
Yeah, you have my DSi probably and you have my original DS. I think I have my DS2, like the second iteration, like the really elegant, clean white one with like the clear accents.
Yeah, I have your Advance. But I love the Advance because that's really what it should have. To me, that's what it should have been initially. It's like, okay, now that I could see this, I could play this. It's backlit. The quality is nice, and the games are fun. First party, third party, that doesn't matter.
It's like indestructible too, which is awesome. Like I had it all over the place. I was riding my bike everywhere when I was a kid. Because again, I grew up in a really cool neighborhood where you could your parents would let you go out and just do whatever in the summer. And I remember playing that thing everywhere, and it got pretty beat up, but no cracks, no screen problems, no reading cartridge problems. Volume always worked. Backlight always worked. And I still have the original one that I got from my dad, and I don't use it as much because that analog pocket is so cool, but that console is just so good. And the library is insane.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah.
And quality, and packed with quality. Maybe the last vestiges of that. I mean, later on, like the later handhelds like the PSP, was there a lot of shovelware and sort of low quality games for those?
No, I think
consoles?
it was I don't know if it was the exact opposite, but it became more specialized. People would publish a lot of Japanese games and games that I think people were doing the math, like we can sell 30,000 copies of this or 50,000 copies of this, which is exactly what happened to Vita too. Although the digital ecosystem on Vita made it such that there's actually a shovelware problem late in Vita's life too, I would argue.
PSP was good for my mom would never buy me games ever. She was like, you wait for Christmas or your birthday. But if I caught her in a good mood at Target, you could always find PSP games in the clearance. And then that was usually my like, Mom, it's like $10. Like, come on. And I could get her to buy me PSP games. So I played a ton of PSP games, but it was always like crappy ones. Cause I got like Killzone Liberation. Never going to forget that one. Cause that game's awesome. But I played a lot of crap just by only being able to play clearance games on the PSP, but I loved it. I was like, this is cool. I like this console. It feels cool.
Liberation, I think came to PlayStation Network, right? The last month or two, which was cool via
I'm going to go back and play it.
So Dustin, why don't you talk on this topic a little bit?
Well, just talking about shovelware. I don't know. I always think about my experience with the original Game Boy is that being in kindergarten and first grade in 1999 and 2000, it was everyone had a Game Boy and none other games mattered. All that mattered was Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow. That's it. That's what everyone was playing it. You were waiting for the bus, playing it, lunch break, playing at recess. It was all consuming these games. And what was the thing for me, and I think I just maybe got I don't want to say a bad experience, but you think about with kids that, especially parents then, it's like, oh, well, get him this Disney game, get him the Pocahontas game for Game Boy. And it's fucking terrible. Some of these Disney or just like more kid-focused games on the Game Boy are so bad. Because of the analog pocket, I've been just checking out some of the random shit that I have for Game Boy. And so I popped in, I think it's Toy Story 1 or 2. It's one of the Toy Story. It's either for Game Boy or Game Boy Color, or it's on one of the cartridges that can do both, I guess. It's so bad. I thought, man, I feel bad for some kid that got this game and it's just totally trash, which I know, it was a kind of an issue on the NES too, where it's just like some of these games, not very good, not very fun, but it's what you had. So you just, tried to beat the first level of Pocahontas over and over again and never could. But it really was all about Pokemon for sure for me. And I remember specifically having a silver Game Boy Pocket. That's one of those things where I don't know where mine is. It's lost to the ether. Who knows? Maybe some collector has it, but I would like to get another one someday. I want to own those consoles that I used to have, even though I'm not going to play on them. I have an analog pocket that's going to be worlds better. But the thing now, so I grew up, I guess before I get to now, I grew up with various different handhelds. Game Boy Advance was pretty big for me. And then I got like a used PSP that I got on Craigslist. I got the the white one that has Darth Vader on the back, which was super
So
sick.
cool.
Oh wow.
And I mean, being in 8th grade, I was hacking it and I was downloading shit.
Oh, that was the
like,
Battlefront one, by the way? The
Yeah.
Darth Vader one? Yeah, I was thinking about. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Yeah, that's a good one.
So yeah, PSP for me was all about downloading, and not, I guess, obviously there was a lot of piracy for me in the PSP. I'm not gonna like tiptoe around it. I was in 8th grade.
Did you do the battery? Like cut the battery thing?
Oh,
that's how I did it. And we my friend and I broke so many batteries, like where the X-Acto knife would touch the metal inside the battery, it would expand it and you were fucked.
Oh, wow.
But that was the craziest stuff, where you had to like cut open the PSP battery and flip up one of the switches on the board. Then you could just install anything you wanted.
So yeah, because I was a poor 8th grader, there was definitely lots of PSP hacking. As far as the battery, I think that by the time that I got into it, you didn't need, I think it was called a Pandora battery or something you could use to hack it or something like that. But the issue now, and this is something you and I talked about just the other day, Jimmy, is that right now they just announced the Steam Deck OLED and it looks amazing. And I desperately, because I love getting new toys and stuff like that, I'm like, man, I really want to get one. But the issue now with handhelds for me is that handhelds are not necessarily playing unique handheld games anymore. They're just playing pared down versions of current games, at least in the Steam Deck area. I guess you could say that's somewhat true with Switch as well, since if it's a third party game, it's going to be a pared down version of that, or a multi-platform game, I should say. So that's the thing about Steam Deck for me in this kind of new wave of handhelds is I am such a quality snob that it's like, yeah, it's cool. It can play Cyberpunk at like low settings and 30 FPS. And I'm like, but I have a 3080 and an OLED TV. I would just be like, I'm not playing that on the go, you know? But I guess when I was playing Steam Deck a lot, it was perfect for older games like PS3, Xbox 360 generation. Like they're perfect on that. So that's always been the give and take for me. And even with the Switch, I'd say I probably use it docked 85% of the time.
Wow.
I don't know. I just like the experience with it. The Switch OLED has made a big difference now where I don't feel like I'm compromising as much if I play handheld. So I will mainly when I play handheld now is I will grab the Switch and I'll bring it up here and it's like I'm downloading files. I'm like, oh, sweet. I'll just play a little bit. And then, I can take it back and dock it later. But it's been fun, particularly with the Analog Pocket, getting back into the old games specifically. And dude, man, the screen, I know I've talked about it on multiple podcasts at this point, but like the screen is so cool. The way it emulates the different Game Boy screens, the way it plays Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance, and it runs. You could play Super Nintendo on it. It's like this perfect retro device that if you have the dock is like a Switch where you can take it or go and enjoy the amazing screen, or you can plug it into the 4K TV. It's amazing. I absolutely love it.
And
have
it doesn't
you encountered
feel
any
janky.
games, Dust, that won't work with it?
So far, I don't think so.
You're batting 1,000. That's good.
I think that it even plays the games with like if you're emulating, I guess not emulating, but you're using the cores for the Super Nintendo, it will do Super FX chip games. Like it handles Star Fox and
that's so
Stunt.
Cool.
What is it? Stunt Crash Racer or something like that. One of those other games,
right?
That uses those. It totally emulates it just fine. It can emulate basically anything up until Nintendo 64 and PS1. It's got like Neo Geo cores that you can download. You can do arcade cores on it.
So cool.
Dude, I think there's even like a Commodore 64 core on it, like all kinds of stuff. So yeah, it's been fun rediscovering handhelds. Like I said, I don't know exactly where they fit in my life sometimes as someone who is always home and really enjoys playing on my TV because It's like, dude, I got a 65-inch OLED. That's the ultimate experience. I don't want to downgrade it on a handheld. And I don't play in bed really either. I want to be a person that can play in bed. I'm never comfortable. I'll play in bed for like 10 minutes. I'm like, oh, my arms are falling asleep immediately. Or the way I'm sitting is like, I'm looking like a gremlin down at the screen and I'm going to have a kink in my neck. So I don't know. I guess that's what I want to ask you, Jimmy, is that you have access to, you have a nice PC, you have all the game consoles like we all do, but yet you still choose Steam Deck. And that's what I'm curious about I feel like there's something I'm missing out on.
I am kind of like you, honestly, where I pick very specific games for the Steam Deck. Like Alan Wake 2 just came out. I got a 4090. I'm playing that with headphones on here in my basement with no lights, right? Like that's a very like horror driven experience. I want it there. But something like Lies of P, where I see an article that's like Lies of P runs medium settings, 30 FPS, just like a hard lock. I'm like, great. That's something I can sit on my couch while I rewatch The Walking Dead because I'm a masochist, and I can play that game while I'm watching something on the TV that's not super story driven, and that's a cool experience for me. I also, this is lame, I don't know, it's not lame, I really like being around my wife. So if she wants to use the like 85-inch OLED or whatever the hell we've got in our living room, I'm like, yes, watch your 240p Bachelor on that. I can run Diablo dungeons on my Steam Deck. So it's more about just like convenience and how the game runs. Like I'll play a game like Spider-Man, that's on my TV, on my PS5. I love it. Halo Infinite on my computer. Lies of P is on my Steam Deck, but then Alan Wake is on my computer. It's like I'm a very agnostic person when it comes to like console fandom nowadays. Yeah. But the Steam Deck was great for replaying Mario 64 and looking awesome, but it's also great for playing in a game like Diablo 4 or Halo Infinite even sometimes, or like Sea of Stars, or these like handheld styled games. But I totally agree with you. I've been thinking about that with the Nintendo Switch. I've been feeling like lately Nintendo kind of got one over on us, because now they can take the games they would have made for the 3DS, put them on the Switch and charge $60 and not even say anything. But then they can also do something like Breath of the Wild, which is a very home console style game, and still charge the exact same amount, and ultimately they win. And like, I'm happy that they got one over on me on that, because I like the experience. But I'm like, I see what they did there, and I kind of miss that they had a separate dedicated branch for handhelds, and I'm like lamenting that we lost that. But yeah, right. The Steam Deck's just the most convenient, I would say. I'm not a game streamer either, so like I'm out on the portal.
Yeah. The thing about Nintendo, I mean, I feel like in one sense you're like, yeah, they did have to do that, it was smart where they're like, oh, we can charge more for maybe games, put a little more budget into them to make them more HD, somewhat consoleized. But at the same time, I think they kind of had to, because they had lost so much third-party support that
it's true.
They knew that their consoles are going to live and die by their own first-party stuff. So it's kind of like they're like, well, we kind of have to. It's probably smart for us to funnel everything into one, and we can make more money doing it. So why wouldn't we do that? So
it's smart, and it worked. Like, I love the Switch. Yeah, I'll never forget that it came out on my birthday. I know that's like such a dumb thing, but I always think about that. I'm like, that is so cool. If I was younger, if I was like in elementary school and the Switch came out and I was like, oh, it came out on my birthday, I would have been like over the moon about that.
Yeah.
But I'll never forget that.
I gotta figure out if I want to get the Steam Deck OLED, just because. And I told you this, Jimmy, is that one of the problems is the Steam Deck screen is ass. It is truly, I think, one of the most subpar modern gaming. Like, the fact that that's what they went with, it's a huge deterrent for me wanting to use the deck, is that I'm like, the screen looks so washed out. The contrast on it is not very good. The colors aren't very good on it. So it's one of the main things that keeps me from using it. And now they're like, hey, we have another Steam Deck that the number one thing you hate, we fixed. It's like, damn it. But I bought the most expensive Steam Deck a year and a half ago.
Yeah. Oh, see, I bought the cheapest one, and because I can never buy the most expensive anything, I have to put myself through trauma. I bought the cheapest one and like upgraded the SSD and went through that mental anguish. But this time, since I use it every day, I have no problem. I bought the limited one, and I'm like, it's going to be so easy when I just open it up and download games and play them on it. It's going to be a fun experience for once.
Colin, how do you feel about, obviously the Vita's history is completely linked to you now. Particularly, I always think about Vita Island. I mean, people say that don't even know.
Yeah, they
you guys made it up.
Yeah, it's funny. We really loved the Vita. In hindsight, it was a thing, and it was cool to be part of that. But there were a lot of other people that were obviously much more intrinsically linked at Sony and had made all the games for it. But like, I do think that we at Podcast Beyond really helped elevate it to wherever it was going to get, and did a lot of favors for it. I think that there was a material aspect on the Vita's performance in the West based on that, which is no doubt, but obviously not very much because it didn't do very well. But
not enough.
I love handheld gaming. I was thinking when this topic came up, why I love it and what was attractive to me about it growing up. And it's like the idea of, well, it's twofold. I love multitasking, and the idea of just being able to sit somewhere, play a video game, and it just be a thing you do in your hands as anything else is going on around you is pretty cool, so that it's not like the dominant force in the space. Because it's not only about you, it could be about other people too, has been noted. So I like the idea of just sitting on a couch and quietly playing my Game Boy as a kid with headphones on while someone was watching TV, and it was total indifference to what I was doing. And I was able to kind of absorb multiple things, and I really enjoyed that too. But as a kid too, I traveled a great deal because I was constantly going back and forth between my mom and my dad, and our mom worked for an airline. So I flew all the time, and just between New England and Long Island and back. And so I was always using my Game Boy and had the little Game Boy Light with the little magnifying thing on it and all that. And it really worked. It was great. And a lot of really memorable games during that era of Game Boy. Game Boy came out when I was in first grade, so it wasn't aimed quite at me, but it was aimed almost at me at that age. And I remember when I became aware that Mega Man games were on it and Castlevania games were on it, it became very attractive to me. And then when I finally got those games, and especially with the Mega Man games, realizing that they're these kind of really well done interpretations of the original games kind of fused together. I don't know if a lot of people know this, like Mega Man 2, for instance, is partially Mega Man 2 and Mega Man 3. And Mega Man 3 is partially Mega Man 3 and Mega Man 4, and so on and so forth. It's really weird. Like, it's 4 enemies from one, 4 enemies from the other. So they made these unique games. I remember specifically getting Link's Awakening, which is not a favorite game of mine. In fact, that was a really frustrating game, but I remember buying it and being so excited to play a Zelda game on handheld. And it went right on through. I remarked on this recently on another podcast, just how interesting it was that the Game Boy lived for so long. Like, the Game Boy itself lived for so long and had this really triumphant end with Pokemon leading right into Game Boy Pocket in that era, and then Game Boy Color as that gave way in 2001 to Game Boy Advance. And so it's a very memorable and long-lasting period that began when I was in elementary school and ended. Pokemon came out when I was in high school. So it's amazing that during that entire time, basically, this handheld was a relevant thing. And I was playing Pokemon in high school, definitely. And that wasn't what you were supposed to be doing in high school in 1998. But that's what I was doing. And my friend Cody and I, Dagan knows Cody, had the link cable, and we would play Pokemon on a constant basis. Definitely, again, not something we were supposed to be doing at that age, it felt like, but we were also at that age where it was becoming more acceptable for everyone to be kind of playing too. And what's funny about handheld gaming to me too is just I guess I have specific memories of many things gaming related, but I just remember getting all of the handhelds. Like when Game Boy Advance at Smith Haven Mall, they came out pre-ordered. Arctic White. Remember going to Target to buy the clamshell that you were showing and buying Pokemon Ruby, I guess that would have been at that time. And that was like my first year of college. And God, I just told the story recently about DS on another episode of Constellation. We were talking about pitching games, and I was just noting that, the DS was kind of given to me or lent to me by a friend of mine at Harvard when I was doing jury duty. And I was like, I can't believe how much I love this thing. And I can just kind of dispatch with the GBA because it accepts the GBA carts. And I really loved the Game Boy Advance, but the DS was a really revolutionary machine that opened me up to a lot of different types of games. And I really, really, really loved it. And the PSP, remember buying that I actually didn't get a PSP. I used to write strategy guides in college for some PSP games at IGN, but I would use my roommate's PSP for that. And I didn't get my own until they redesigned it. And I think they had a bundle with Castlevania Dracula X. And this would have been in probably 2007. So it would probably been a little less than 2 years after the PSP came out. That's when I finally got one. And then I ended up getting a second one because I wanted to have a hacked one. So I had one that was just totally separate from the PSN, and then one that, you know, I don't think I even really connected either of them with the PSN. I guess I must have connected them with the PSN. I never had any digital games on my PSP though. You know, just the physical games. And then Vita, and everyone knows, I think most people know the history of me and Vita. I loved it, and we tried as hard as we could to support it as media. And then as a developer, I tried to definitely help support it too. And we got to get some games on it, which was awesome. We would still make games for it if we were able to. We were actually using an old version of Game Maker, our engine, just to be able to port to Vita. And so it was a very sophisticated and stupid thing to like make it more complicated. We didn't have a lot of plugins and tools, but we needed to keep this old, really pristine version of it going so we could just port the games to Vita. And then once they cut that off, then we could finally move on to a more modern version of Game Maker. So yeah, I guess the PSP is funny. Like was said, it was a hacking machine, I guess. But I must admit that I've never been a very sophisticated emulator of video games. Like when I was in high school, I had Nesticle and all that kind of stuff, and SNES 9X and all of that.
Yeah.
But I was never really very deep into it. And so when I got that second PSP, which I got because I wanted like the new form factor PSP or whatever, or it wasn't a new form factor. It was like a new, like you were saying, it's like PSP 2000 or something like that. There's something different about it. And I got one. And so my friend at IGN was like, oh, I can just put NES games on this other PSP for you. And I was like, oh, that's great. And so it was basically just became like an NES, and I think later SNES, some games like that. But as I got older, I got a little bit, these days, I guess I'm like kind of really chronically uncomfortable with emulating games, just because I'm not going to judge you as a person for doing it. I don't really care. It's just like now that I have skin in the game, especially, it's like, I know for a fact that you can turn on a hacked Vita and get my games for free along with every other game that's ever been made on Vita. And that's your right, I guess. I just don't want to contribute to that, you know?
I would just be careful conflating emulation and just straight piracy, because those are very different, I would say.
Well, you're right, but that always seemed legalistic to me. What are you doing on the emulator? I mean, I like, unless it's all just making new games for it.
Well, if you own Super Mario World, I mean, theoretically, yes, it is illegal to download a ROM, even if you own the game. You legally can rip it and emulate it, though.
Right. I know all of that, like the whole argument, even of like, if I have the cartridge and then all of the, but you understand what I'm saying, where it always seemed kind of like, yeah, I know, but we all know what you're doing with it. And it's like, who's emulating an NES and not playing NES games on it?
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's different to me when it's like, oh, this is a game that, first of all, A, I don't own, or even B, there's an option to go out and buy it right now. You know what I mean? Which I would say most of the emulation scene is about that specifically.
Yeah,
I'd say the Vita hacks where they're downloading copies of Twin Breaker for free.
That's fucked up.
That's totally fucked up and a totally different thing. For me and my morals,
I understand that.
Yeah.
I understand it. I also want to be clear that I'm not really judging anyone for anything even. Like, I've never been one of those people.
Dude, I would totally judge people that are stealing from you, dude.
Well, no, I understand that. But I mean, I would, let me back up and say what I am trying to say is not in judgment of anyone. I guess on an individual basis, if I knew you were doing that, obviously I would judge you, but I'm not even trying to say anything about the moral of it. I'm just saying that it's not just from a personal standpoint. I just don't want to contribute to it. And I don't, to the point I was making, I understand the difference between emulation and also the different, well, that's the important point I was making, is like, I don't give a fuck if you're emulating NES games. And so I agree with you. It is technically illegal, I guess, but the point is, I'm not really sophisticated enough to even know where any of this stuff comes from anymore. I come from the day of like literally Napster and shit like that. Right. You know, the fact that I don't even understand how any of it works anymore. and how I also don't understand. And this is a deep mystery to me, how anyone gets away with it. Because if you're pirating movies, certainly that's known, right, by the ISP. They probably are just turning a blind eye to it because that's probably good for business until they get served their own letters, and then they have to serve you your letter and so on and so forth. But it's like it's not like stealing cable in the fucking 80s or something. It's just totally, you're just drawing all this attention. And all
the thing that sucks now about that, I got a letter from AT&T about pirating a movie, but I'll tell you why I did it. It was Mike Flanagan's movie Hush, which is a slasher movie, and I wanted to watch it around Halloween. This was a Netflix original that they made, or they paid to get it produced. And it's not available on Netflix, and you can't buy it anywhere anymore. And they never put out a physical copy of it. And my friends and I were talking about it, and I was like, that's crazy that I can't even go back to the original place where it was because all this weird licensing shit. So then I figured out how to torrent stuff, which I haven't done since middle school probably. And I was like, this is crazy. This is so weird. And I feel so bad. And then I got a letter from AT&T that was like, hey, if you do that again, we will actually report you. Don't do it. And then I found out I should have been using a VPN when I did it. But that's what sucks about now is this whole streaming thing. I'm more into movies now, on YouTube and everything. But the streaming era has kind of created this situation where movies can just be deleted from history, and you can't be able to get them, or else their weird tax write-off doesn't work. So now it's kind of on the movie side, you're forced into pirating stuff. But then on the game side, I'm more elitist, where I would love to just have, I could emulate Pokemon Leaf Green on my Analog Pocket, but I don't want to, because it's that's a fake, dirty version of it. I would just rather have the cartridge and play off that. And I feel cool that I can do that. So yeah, my taste has shifted, I think, from, whoa, it's so cool that I can emulate Super Mario World on my MacBook Pro in high school, to now, it's cool that in the absence of a cool boutique version of this Game Boy Advance SP that Nintendo isn't making, I can buy something new that allows me to play the cartridge that I've had since I was in 5th grade. And I think that's cool.
That's well said. And there's a preservation aspect too. I mean, I know a lot of the conversation is I'm getting this thing for free, but especially with retro video game emulation, there is a preservation angle. Kyle, let me ask you this: the fact that your games and Lilymo's games are getting digitally preserved, is that worth? I know you guys are taking.
Gosh, thank you guys for preserving our games.
Is that worth the financial loss to you? Because obviously you and Barry and everything are taking your own, action as far as backing up your games and making sure they're available in posterity.
Yeah, we have physical versions of them, and we also have the core the core builds of all of them. So we will always have them on our debug units or whatever. But I don't know. It doesn't. That's what I was trying to say is I guess as an individual, I would judge a person pirating, but I wasn't even really trying to bring up the moralistic angle of it at all, because it's so deeply complex. I feel bad. Where I was really bad was with music, but again, that was in literally the late 90s into 2000, 2001, because that shit got shut down, and I never really pursued it after that. It was that very brief period of, wow, this is fucking insanity.
Yeah.
I remember you can get whatever you want on this thing.
It's a wild west.
Yeah, it was awesome.
That's so
Thanks,
wild.
Lars.
And and then so there was I would say there was a probably 2-year period or so, 2.5-year period, where it really was completely unregulated and no one knew what was really going on. And I was getting music, and we were burning fucking video games and doing all sorts of things. I wasn't selling them or making any money off of it. And I was also in high school, but I look back at that and I'm like, I wouldn't want my kid to be doing that. But I also think that it's true to differentiate between old and inaccessible and currently available and reasonably accessible, because I also think it gets into this question, which I think is very interesting. And I've talked about this before, is okay, Disney blinks Willow out of existence, right? The Willow reboot or whatever the fuck that was. It's yes, but what gave us the right to have it forever? Or what naturalistic right is it that, okay, this was released and thus must always exist? To me, I just can't square those two things. So I don't really worry about it too deeply, I guess, because someone's always going to have a pirated version of it. And it's whatever. I guess it's really ultimately, it's not up to me if you release this thing and then take it away. That was the expectation with fucking movies until VCRs were invented and Betamaxes were invented, right? I mean, that's where video clubs came from in the 70s and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. I personally think that, so in that with like an old film from the 60s that no one knows who even owns it kind of situation. That's a problem with the NES. Like no one even knows who owns some of the shit. That's why it's not released, is there's danger in even releasing or acknowledging some of these companies are defunct and shell companies and all sorts of weird shit. And so I just think if those things exist, then yeah, go pirate it, I guess. I don't care. But for me, I don't, like you were talking about torrenting. I know that word, but I don't know how I assume it's the same thing, like peer-to-peer style things. Yeah.
You have to like go to a site that has bad ads on it, and then you're like downloading this. Yeah. And then you're like connecting to people. Because I was like, what even is this? So I Googled it. You're like connecting to people who have that file on their computer, and you're downloading little bits from everyone who has it.
Oh, okay.
And then eventually it finishes. But it worked really well for that one movie. But that's the only thing recently that I've ever torrented. Because now I'm like, I don't want to watch a pirated version of a streamable movie if I can help it, because I still enjoy buying 4K Blu-rays because they look so good. And I've kind of poisoned myself a little bit where I can see the difference now between watching a movie off a disc and then streaming it to my TV. So at the end of the day, I'd rather just pay a little more to get a better quality product. But it gets so annoying, specifically with horror, because the right situations you're just talking about with NES, it's even crazier with horror. Like the guy who owns the rights to Dawn of the Dead, he's just an asshole and charges like insane amounts of money to license that movie. So someone bought the like ridiculously priced 4K scan of it and just uploaded it to YouTube, and the guy's so computer illiterate he doesn't know how to do anything about it. So you can watch like a 4K HDR cut of Dawn of the Dead on YouTube. Someone just like took one for the team there. And I like that there's people who do that stuff, but it does suck when you really want to watch a horror movie with your buddies and it's like, I guess I could torrent and connect my computer to the TV. And nothing feels more humiliating than being that guy who's like hooking their laptop up to the TV and like girls are there. You're like, I hate that I know how to do this and I'm showing you that I know how to do it.
They're like, don't worry, it has an HDMI port on my laptop.
And it looks so trashy when you got like a fucking laptop, your laptop charger's halfway across the room, the HDMI is out the side of your TV, and you're like, look, I did it. And everyone's like, awesome,
no
dude.
cool way of doing
the keyboard light is still on. It's like super distracting, you know? And you're like,
your gamer keyboard's like,
yeah.
Yeah, that's
the fan turns on.
It's to me, I just rationalize it as in like, I'm in a position now where I can buy and access most of any of these things if they're available in a reasonable way, right? And then I'm like, well, it's not your right to not be able to. People are like, well, I don't have the money, or I can't afford it, I don't have the access. And I'm like, well, it's not your right. And then, well, their logical conclusion will be like, well, I don't care what you think. And it's like, well, fair enough. So we just find ourselves back in this situation. So again, that's why I was saying I'm not really casting aspersions about it. It's not something that really keeps me up at night. If people can't afford $8 for Herbraxia Vita, then they might have bigger fish to fry in some sense.
Have at it.
Why do they have a Vita? Like at that, like that's a niche console to have. If you're like, I gotta pirate this $8 game.
Yeah, I mean,
like,
it's more of a reflection in some way on you. But the one thing I will say is that a lot of this problem, this accessibility problem, could probably be, and we're going to be running into this in the coming decades. It can probably be figured out by like trademark laws and public domain and all these things. The crazy thing is that a lot of these games in our lifetimes will enter the public domain, and it'll be interesting to see if companies like Nintendo have these very, very, very staunch fights like Disney has had with things like Mickey Mouse to make sure that does not happen.
Yeah, you know? I'm sure it'll go that way.
Yeah.
With Nintendo's. There's the publishers that don't exist and the developers that don't exist anymore, where it's going to get interesting.
But it even happened with Winnie the Pooh, right? Like where Disney can only protect their version of Winnie the Pooh.
Right.
And then everything else is in the public domain now, which is interesting. Yeah. So I wonder,
and
they're only going to be able to go so far with Mickey Mouse. I think so. I'm sorry, Jimmy, what'd you say?
There's a movie called Winnie the Pooh, Blood and Honey that these guys, like, as soon as that went into public domain, they threw together this, like, one of the worst slashers you've ever seen, but they got a theatrical run out of it just because they were the first. And
wow,
I'm sure if Disney was like not happy,
I gotta look at that.
Yeah, so I wonder.
It's fun to watch if you're drunk, but yeah.
It would be interesting to know the specific dates of when we'll have to start dealing with some of these things. And
That's a good point.
And if they become accelerated, and then that becomes, because once something's in the, it's very similar to, like, I was looking recently on my Kindle for like 19th century literature, and you can buy, they charge you like a few dollars because they bundled it together and they make a little bit of their rip, but you could buy like every 19th century book ever, basically bundled together.
That's incredible.
Of novel of any note for like $3 because they're just there. You can just do whatever you want with them. Anyway, I could literally print versions of, I don't know, Oliver Twist and sell it right now, and that would be totally illegal. So eventually that will be possible with all these different games, and then that will not be a problem anymore, which is why I don't really think that this is I think the whole backing everything up and preserving everything, I'm like, I think it's a little overstated, but because I think capitalism will take care of that before long, in my opinion. Like, we don't need anyone to back up 19th century novels. They exist by the millions and millions and millions because they were reproduced over and over and over and over again by people that didn't originally own them. But I digress. Dagan, I want to be mindful of your time.
I'm gonna run.
So goodbye to you. We say goodbye to you now.
Yeah, partying is such sweet sorrow. I'm sorry to leave the party early. This really sucks. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's all right. It's all good.
What is this Jaffe shit?
Yeah, it is some Jaffe shit, isn't it? Some nonsense. No, it's okay, man. We're recording back-to-back days to catch up with everything, like we said. So we had to fit some things around the schedule, as they might say in the Patriot. So
schedule.
All right. Well, goodbye to you. We'll stop recording now, and then we'll come back, and it'll just be the three of us. So goodbye to you, Dagan.
Godspeed, boys.
See you, Dagan.
All right, we're back without Dagan to wrap this up, Dustin, with your topic, which it comes at an interesting time. I was just talking to Micah. We were taking a break while we were saying goodbye to Dagan, and we had a pee. So I was just talking to her briefly, and she's like, she loves grilling and smoking in the backyard now. So she's got some ribs going back there. And then I'm like, oh man. And then she was like, and I'm making some bread. And I'm like, you got to stop. You're making me fat. And then I'm like, oh no, I'm not. And then she was like, and I got the cheese going for the mac and cheese. And I was like, geez Louise, man.
I'm so jealous.
It's going to be a night tonight.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I'm excited. So on that note, hit me with it.
Yeah. So my topic is, I don't want to call it mundane, but I'm just really curious about what you guys do for weeknight meals, because everyone, we talk about, we got Thanksgiving coming up. Everyone likes to talk about the extravagant things that you make. Right. But it's probably not more important, but more interesting about what you make on a weekly rotation. And I'm always curious about how people operate with that. It's like, are you constantly looking for new things? Do you eat the same 5 or 6 meals over the course of a week and then just do that every week until eventually you're like, I can't do it anymore? For Holly and I, we've always cooked at home a lot because luckily Holly is a fantastic cook and I'm pretty decent depending on what it is. So we've had a really nice relationship where either one of us can cook. And so it's never feels like, Holly's like, oh, I'm cooking every night, I just don't want to do it or something. We are able to balance that out. But we have settled into somewhat of a routine of certain meals. And I'm curious what you guys think about. I'm curious to hear about some of your meals as well, but I guess I'll start off. The most unique one that we make, and this dude, I'm gonna get blasted for this. I'm gonna made fun of, but Japanese curry. We make Japanese curry probably once a week, and it's so fucking good. Basically, you can get these you can get like these curry packs. They sell them at Walmart. Maybe at Target, but they don't sell them at Aldi, but you get them at Walmart. It's Golden Curry is the brand. And so you can make like chicken curry and it has, potatoes and carrots and chicken inside, and you make rice on the side. Shit slaps. And here's the thing. It's one of those meals too, that when you make it, it is better the next day when you reheat it. Certain meals got that essence to them. Holly and I are also a big fan of, what I lovingly call white people taco night, which there's that meme song from that one guy.
Yes.
Which is just like, you get the shitty box of the shells and ground beef and you use the packet or whatever. Though we've switched to making our own taco seasoning because it's really easy and cheap. But dude, I'm all about the white people taco night. I don't even really fancy mine up at all, though. I've fallen into this habit where I like the crunchy taco shells, but Holly likes the tortillas, the soft shells. But I've realized, I'm like, bro, I can just put the hard shell and then put a soft shell on the outside, and you get the best of both worlds. But you're also just like frivolously adding way more carbs to every single taco. So I try to not do that for all of them, but tacos are big. And then I also, Colin, much like you and Micah, we love grilling here is absolutely huge for us, though it sucks because the wintertime in Western Pennsylvania can get a little difficult to grill. But I was making these awesome chicken al pastor tacos where I was like mixing up the sauce and stuff like that and grilling them out. Normally al pastor is done on like a spit, but you can just grill this recipe that I have. But so I guess throwing this over to you guys, Jimmy, I'll throw this to you. Just the meals I'm curious about, but also just like what is dinner time like in the Champagne? I mean, you're newly, I guess you're both of you guys are newlyweds, but you've been living with your either, your fiance, your partner, wife, whatever, for a decent amount of time now. But what's a normal weeknight dinner like for you?
So it's a little crazy in the Champagne household lately because I talked about this earlier in the show, but we moved into our house way earlier than we were supposed to. And we bought a really old house that we had to basically like gut a lot of the kitchen because the last time it was redone was in the 70s. And so long story short, between June of this year and now, I've only had a grill, which ironically is the same grill that Colin has. I saw Micah tweeted a picture of it and I was like, yo, we got the same grill. Nice. I got it as a wedding gift from our registry and it's awesome. It's a charcoal grill and I have become very good at grilling. So I do burgers one night. I do a lot of chicken. I do barbecue chicken. The store by my house, the grocery store that's like right down the street, which is awesome to have it that close. They do a lot of like pre-prepared and marinated stuff. So I'll pick up like a fajita one where they cut up the chicken or the steak and they seasoned it and they have a sauce on it already. And I have like a frying pan type thing that you can use on the grill. So that's always great. That's
is that hit. Like well, it's not like a Blackstone. There's like the brand Blackstone, but
it's like a, if you had a pan, but it had a bunch of holes in it. So the grease can kind of drip out onto the charcoal. And that's great. I have to make 2 of everything that involves bread. So like, or it's like pasta, right? Like we just got our oven the other day. So I officially made 1 meal on it. I make this chicken pasta that Kelsey really likes. It's just, like chicken breast with garlic, salt and pepper on it, and then butter in the pasta with it. I have to make 2 pastas because Kelsey is celiac. So I feel like a real chef where I'm like stirring her pasta. I'm stirring my pasta. I'm separating the 2 chicken breasts. So there's like no cross contamination whatsoever. And it's been like really fun learning how to like work around that. But yeah, so a lot of chicken. So we do fajitas, barbecue chicken. I will do steaks on Thursday or Friday. We'll get like a strip steak. I've gotten some like stuffed chicken thighs and just all sorts of crazy stuff, whatever I can find at the grocery store that's already pre-cut, because we also don't have a kitchen sink. That is still not a thing for us. So we've been using like paper plates and everything. So the most I can eliminate pan and like dirtying up plates and everything wise, that's what I'll do. So the grill is coming clutch big time, a lot of grilling. But now it's like we're down to the wire because we're in Michigan. It's going to get cold. And thankfully, we have the oven now, and then the kitchen sink is getting finished on Monday. So we're at the home stretch.
Nice.
So I guess the question I'll ask, and I'll ask this to you too, Colin, is that something that has been important to me as long as Holly and I have been married, and I think will only get more important as we get older and, have family and stuff like that, is the sanctity of dinner at the table itself. Now, and I think this was like shocking to me when I dated this one girl where her family, they would order dinner and like they would mostly order out all the time, and they would gather at the kitchen table. Everyone would get their stuff, and then they would like disperse to the different rooms of their house. I was like, what the fuck? Do you guys not eat together? Like, no, not really. Not unless we're like out at a restaurant. this is just so weird. So do you guys do you eat at your table, or do you, I know some people eat in front of their TV too. Holly and I will do that sometimes where we'll watch something when we eat.
Yeah. But for me, we sit at our counter and watch TV usually, or on our computers when we eat, sitting next to each other, but just doing our own things. And we have a kitchen table. We almost never our table to sit at. We almost never sit at unless we have guests. So yeah,
that's a nice table though.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it is. I love it. But yeah, we don't really do that. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's different when you're in the house together probably all the time. But like when I was younger, it was all about the meal being the meeting place.
Yeah. I think there's something to that. We're just together always. So,
right.
But yeah, as far as me answering this question, I actually like cooking. I'm actually fairly proficient at it, but Micah has made me totally lazy. I don't cook at all anymore. I mean, I occasionally will cook eggs at night or something, or some weird snack, or make a plate of nachos or something, but that's not really cooking. Maybe get some meat going. But I'll say that I'm eating really good these days. She's got me really set up nice. And the beauty of it, we have a division of labor in some ways, but I think she can speak for herself, I guess, on this topic in the future, but she likes to cook. She likes to cook. She likes to bake. She likes doing all of these things. And so I really appreciate it and will take full advantage of that. I think that's and not in a bad way. It's like, yeah, cook, do whatever you got to do. It's awesome when sometimes she doesn't want to cook, or it's like the day is getting later, or we'll just order in. It's like really whatever she wants to do is fine with me, but she just always likes to cook. Cause as I got older in my 20s and 30s, I liked going out to eat and stuff like that. And we still go out to eat once in a while, but I'm probably going out to eat less than I've almost ever have in my life, because we eat pretty well here. So she has like a rotisserie of different things going all the time. Like different meats, could be like chicken cutlets or pork chops or pork tenderloin or a steak. Obviously burgers and fries, or like hot dogs and fries would be like 2 meals. Bunch of different pasta dishes. She makes like homemade sauce, meatballs or sausages, bunch of stuff from the grill, different smoked meats and mac and cheese and greens and all that kind of stuff. So it's great. And it's really every day of the week. So I'm very, very, very fortunate and very lucky. I, again, would cook for myself if I had to, but it wouldn't be that diverse of a collection of things, because I do get very fixated and focused in on like 2 or 3 meals, and then we'll make them over and over and over again until I'm sick of them. Like I was making a lot of rice and sausage and doing like all these different, with beans and stuff when I lived in San Francisco, and just making a bunch of different things like that, and a lot of different greens and broccoli rabe and all sorts of stuff. And then I just bash it into the ground, and then I'll move on and start making like a bunch of different pasta dishes, and then I'll just bash that into the ground. And that's usually how I go about cooking for myself, but I just hopefully will never have to do that again. So
yeah.
Yep.
Holly and I, one thing that I think I mentioned once, I was with her parents, and I was like, yeah, Holly made this, and I like somehow basically said it wasn't very good in a polite way, and I think that really shocked Holly's dad. And I'm curious, like when Holly and I both cook something, we are both extremely critical of the food we make, and we're never offended by it. Like specifically certain things Holly will try out, be like, yeah, this wasn't very good. But if you did this and this next time, that would probably make it good. Like we have a nice relationship where it's like, yeah, this didn't turn out, but that's okay, because this is what I think you should do next time instead, which I really appreciate, just because like I said, when I was talking with Holly's parents, it sounded like, he said that he didn't like something his wife made. Like, what are you, an ungrateful pig? How dare you say that?
We have a similar understanding where I think, because it's only happened 2 or 3 times, and I'm not even really sure what was made over the last 3.5 years or so, or however long we've been living together. That's 3 years, where I'm like, I don't really like this. And it's usually like something about like some ingredient in it or something like that. And
right.
We feel like we have to be brutally honest with each other, because otherwise you're going to make this thing again or forever, and I'm going to have to eat it again. So I think we have a reasonable understanding with each other, where she hits home run after home run after home run after home run, to the point where it's very, very rare. And it's not really her skill or anything, or the execution. It's usually like some random ingredient that I just didn't care for or something like that. And so hopefully we can continue to It's like how I've told her, I'm like, you got to keep me honest about like my weight, my form. Like if you really see me like starting to get heavier, you need to say something. And I'm like, you're not going to insult me. You need to say something. You're the one around me. And like, we have an understanding. Like, and I think we have the same thing going for that too. I hope. Maybe one day I say something and she punches me in the face. I don't know. But,
so Jimmy, you said that all of your meals are grilled still?
Yeah.
Just because you don't have an oven at all?
We didn't until this week. Actually.
Okay, yeah, that's what you said. I was trying to remember. I was like, dang.
And yeah, it's like been all summer, which is great after my bachelor party because everyone came here and I was like, I got this Handheld guys. I like cooked them all burgers and stuff, and that was fun. But yeah, the question about if you can tell each other if you don't like the food, I do the majority of the cooking because Kelsey runs a Lululemon, which is like the most full-time job ever. She's always got some fire that she's got to like handle. So I've been cooking a lot lately, and especially because the grill, she doesn't want to go out there and start up a charcoal grill. I'm like, I totally understand. So she can tell me if she doesn't like something. And usually I've already identified it. Like I left something on the grill too long, or I left one side the little chart or whatever. But one time, like right when we moved in with each other, probably about 8 years ago, she left work early so she could cook chicken skewers that she found a recipe for. She's like, you cook all the time. I'll cook something. It'll be great. And for some reason, this recipe, I saw it. I verified this. It said to do 2 teaspoons of like cayenne pepper, or no, 2 tablespoons of cayenne pepper instead of teaspoons. And so they were like inedible. They were so hot, but I felt so bad that I like choked 3 chunks of chicken down, and then she broke the ice and was like, these are inedible, you can stop eating it, because she knows I'm not like huge on spicy stuff. And I was like, oh, thank God. So that kind of like broke the dam for us, and we can just be like,
nice,
yo, this sucks. But I'm a texture person, and she knows like what textures I don't like, so everything she's made since then, she's cool. Everything's cool. That's like the one thing I don't got to worry about.
Dude, it's funny about the skewers, because I think there's been 2 or 3 times in the past almost 10 years now where it's you sit down to eat and then you realize something catastrophically went wrong. Like Holly once made this. She was really excited to try to make this cheeseburger soup because this restaurant we like to go to has a cheeseburger soup. She's like, I'm going to try to make this. This is before she was still lactose intolerant at the time, but it's before she cut it out. So she was able to eat some of it, and now she just can't. But something happened where like they needed those little, I think are they called bouillon cubes?
Oh, bouillon cubes.
Oh yeah,
bouillon cubes.
Yeah.
And she just put like something about the recipe, because I remember she was like, no, this is what the recipe says, and these cubes don't work for this. It was like pure salt. Like I ate a little bit and I was like, my throat is burning right now. I'm going to die if I keep eating this. She was like, yeah, we can't eat this. And it's like, it feels bad at the moment because it's like, well, now what the fuck? What are we going to do? Like, I guess we're just going to go to McDonald's or something. Because
yeah, we got Domino's. We were like, oh, great. We'll just get Domino's.
Yeah.
It was fine. I don't know. But yeah, the grill was fun to master, especially the charcoal grill. I was like, there's like an art to it where you're controlling the airflow from the bottom and the top to like, that's how you control the heat. And that was honestly like a fun little hobby to learn. But I'm glad that I get to take the winter off from using the grill now, because it was every day. And I would cook lunch on it too. Like after I go to the gym, I'd be like, out in my backyard.
That's hardcore.
Yeah, it is.
You were setting up the charcoal grill for lunch and dinner.
Yeah, and I would just sit on TikTok and, I mean, like I'm fortunate to have a job where it's like so flexible, where it's like I can make the videos whenever. And like I've basically been living with workers of various different rooms of the house since I moved in. So I usually would wait to record and edit and everything until after they had left, around like 3 or 4. So I had to find something to keep busy anyway. So I was going to the gym more and, like cooking lunch on the grill, just finding things that would take up the amount of time where I had people in and out of my house.
Yeah. I want to get a charcoal grill. I understand that they are superior in every way in terms of the way your food tastes with them. But I guess you were doing it though. You were setting up the charcoal. I'm always afraid of that part where it's like, I feel like it'd be so annoying. It's like setting it up, making sure the heat's right. And then
this grill came with like 2 baskets that you just fill either one with the charcoals. And they make charcoal now that's like pre-lighter fluided, and you just have to like give it enough time to burn off. So you don't get that like lighter fluid taste, but it changes the heat. I can leave it wide open when I use those baskets because you adjust the heat by moving those baskets around. So if you want like a bit like more heat, you move them together in the middle. And if you want less heat, you put them apart. So that made it way easier. But I really don't miss the convenience of the propane grill. Like it's just an extra 10 minutes to wait for the charcoals to get white at the beginning.
This is very inspiring because we have a gas grill and I love it. But I always went with gas because I was like, it's just too convenient when you want to make 2 hot dogs for lunch, Yeah. So that's very interesting though. But
are you satisfied, Dustin?
Yeah. No problem. Yeah, a little shorter of a topic, but that's okay.
Yeah. A little postscript. That was fun. That was a good episode. I'm sorry Dagan couldn't see it all the way through, but these trying times as we try to record everything for the vacation period that we're going to take, and I'm looking forward to that. Appreciate everyone's patience with that. So let's go around and say goodbye to everyone. Jimmy, thank you for taking the time to join us on your first episode of Constellation. Hope you had fun today.
This was awesome. This was a great way to spend my Saturday. I loved it. Thanks for having me, guys.
Cool, man. I appreciate that. Where can people find you if you'd like for them to? Some people don't want to be found.
I'm on YouTube and Twitter, or X, formerly Twitter, at Jimmy Champane. Very easy to find. There's no G in my last name, but if you spell it wrong, it'll come up now. So many people did it. So yeah, that's where you'll find me.
Nice. And then Dustin, goodbye to you. Enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
2 things. First of all, the first retro game store opened in Butler today.
Oh, cool.
And I'm going to go check it out. It's on Main Street. I'm just going to go see what's going on, see if the prices are acceptable or not. So I'm excited. We're going to do that right after this. Jimmy, at the very beginning of the show, I said I wanted to ask you something. And then I think we got into a void of, something unrelated. So I was thinking the other day, because no spoilers, there's a character in Alan Wake named Mr. Scratch, and that's like his alternate evil identity. Jimmy, I feel like I thought like Jimmy's alternate identity of an evil person would be like Timmy LaCour, but it has an E at the end, right? Because your name doesn't have the E.
There's no
so
G.
He's got the E. I don't know. I wonder what you think about this Spider-Verse version of yourself that could be out there. Timmy LaCour.
I'm sure there is someone out there, but I also have like 4 cousins that are all named James Champane. So I've dominated the Google search results, but if you go a few pages in, you'll find my cousin James, who's like a doctor. And then
there's some lawyer out there named Dustin Furman that when you search him, I've overtaken him now, but he is the 3rd search result of this lawyer named Dustin Furman. What are you doing out there? Let's have him on the pod.
Yeah, get him.
What if we had a podcast, me, you, and Chris, and we had 3 people that all had the same names as us?
Yeah, that would be fun.
At the same time.
That'd be fun. I told you that when I was a writer at GameFAQs in high school, someone wrote to me saying he had my name, Colin Moriarty, but that he was older than me, so that he was like the real Colin Moriarty, and it really bothered me. Like I didn't.
What do you say? Like, okay?
Yeah, I didn't write back or anything. I was just like, I was infuriated that I never really considered that someone else would have my name, and then you realize like, no, there's quite a few people that have your name. So. C'est la vie. All right, let's get the hell out of here, my friends. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support. Appreciate you. Patreon.com/laststandmedia for early ad-free access, etc. Laststandmedia.store for merch. Until next time, goodbye. Constellation is a product of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show was conceived by and is directed and hosted by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-host is my brother, Dagan Moriarty. The show is produced by Last Stand's executive producer, Dustin Furman, and is edited by associate producer, Ben Smith. All Last Stand theme music is by Ramon Narvaez, and all of our graphics and logos are by Dagan Moriarty. As you know, all of Last Stand Media's podcasts, including Constellation, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest support tier, and we're infinitely grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor.